Chapter 221. To Live or to Die 1. The days passed, and yet that young man remained locked away in his dark cell. From time to time, many came to see him, his sister, his comrades. But Fry Starlight never responded to anyone. He simply sat there, lost in a daze, occasionally falling into fits of hysterical madness. He had been like this for days now. His body, strangely enough, continued to heal on its own. He refused food, refused water, rejected them all. And yet, his body still functioned perfectly. Every day, Fry Starlight became more of an enigma to those who watched him, as the Empire prepared itself for his trial. The victor of the Victoriad. Once hailed as one of the greatest talents, the boy who defeated the chosen hero, was now a prisoner, chained atop cold stone, awaiting the judgment of others to decide his fate. Events unfolded quickly, yet far away from Fry and the endless uproar within the Empire. Back at the hospital that had witnessed Frey's madness and his suicidal outburst, that facility now lay in ruins. Among the wreckage and the crumbling building, you could still see broken medical equipment and a few lingering stains of blood. Hidden among the debris was something no one had noticed. A laptop, a black laptop, still running. Its screen illuminated with a simple, unwavering message. Unseen by anyone, it remained like that for days. On its glowing screen, a set of words gleamed. Final mission. Completed. Phase 1. Complete. Upgrading Author's Tools to the next level. Author's Tools Level 1, Level 2. Progress. 91%. Slowly, that number inched toward the perfect 100%, marking the beginning of an entirely new chapter in the story of Fry Starlight. Belgrade. The day had come. The day that would determine his fate. The fate of Fry Starlight. Inside the Court of Light, the place where the Empire's most critical trials had been held throughout its history. The doors opened once more, this time for a boy who had only just turned 18. The trial was made public. Every seat inside the grand courtroom was filled to the brim. It was almost laughable. This was the same court that once sentenced the former temple head, Raphael Bloodmater. Now, it was about to do the same to a mere student. Special seats were reserved for the heads of noble houses, behind them the guild leaders, and the strongest awakened. The courtroom was built in a circular fashion, with the accused standing in the center, surrounded by countless watching eyes. Seated at the highest position, Emperor Mikar Valerian himself presided over the proceedings, the man who would ultimately decide whether Fry Starlight would live or die. All of Frey's acquaintances were present, his family, his peers, everyone. You could even see that strange alliance forming, the Starlight and Sunlight families sitting together, side by side. Aegon and Sansa sat near their father, while, strangely enough, Oliver Khan sat closer to Princess Sansa than to the Emperor this time. The sound of murmurs filled the courtroom as people whispered about the situation. But the entire hall fell silent the moment the great doors opened. Through them entered Ivar Valerian, followed by two guards dragging a young man behind them. Fry Starlight. Chained, barefoot, he staggered toward the center of the court, his white hair disheveled, falling messily across his face and body. He wore nothing but a dirty white shirt and black trousers. Yet despite everything, his body looked flawless, perfectly healed. It made no sense. Who could believe that this was the same boy who had once stood as the champion of the Victoriad? The hero who had turned into a criminal overnight. They tied him in place under hundreds of watching eyes, and the guard stepped back, leaving Ivar alone standing there, facing Fry. Ivar inspected him closely. Don't bother resisting. The more you struggle, the tighter these chains will bind you. Fry said nothing. The chains wrapped around him were a special tool, crafted to imprison even the most dangerous criminals, tightening their grip with every attempt to resist, to the point where they could literally crush the victim's body. Seated upon a wooden chair, bound in place, Fry silently waited for the trial to begin. And it was Mikar who finally announced it. Let the trial of the former Lord of House Starlight, Fry Starlight, begin. The courtroom fell into complete silence for a moment, until Mikar continued. First, let us present the defendant's crimes one final time for all to hear. Responding to the Emperor's words, Ivar stepped forward and began. The crimes committed by Fry Starlight are as follows. He listed the charges. He murdered 38 individuals, both men and women, during his rampage at the Temple Hospital. All his victims were killed barehanded, without the use of any weapon. Rumble. That first charge alone was enough to ignite a wave of indignation toward Fry. The courtroom stirred with anger as murmurs and shouts for his execution filled the hall. But all noise ceased the moment Mikar Valerian released his oppressive aura, forcing everyone to submit under its overwhelming weight. Without even glancing at them, the Emperor motioned to Ivar. Continue. With a nod, the current headmaster of the temple proceeded. Second, the defendant unleashed a devastating attack that could have annihilated the entire temple. Fortunately, it resulted only in material damage. Ivar paused briefly before adding, although further casualties were avoided, it is crucial to recognize that the defendant possesses powers capable of killing not just 38 people, but potentially thousands, if not more. In other words, Fry Starlight could not be treated as an ordinary criminal. He had the potential to cause a catastrophe. The defendant also wields an SS-ranked flaming weapon, one of the rarest in existence. Classified in the same league as the sacred sword Vermithor. We still don't know how he acquired it, but it is suspected that it originated from the Eastern Nightmare Lands, where the defendant spent an entire year. With each revelation about Fry, the murmuring slowly began to return. A boy who lived among monsters and became a monster himself. That most likely was what everyone thought. But Ivar wasn't finished yet. And finally, although we have yet to confirm it completely, the headmaster hesitated seriously before uttering the final bombshell. The defendant appears capable of breaking the limits of his talent. His innate potential, initially ranked as A, has recently risen to S. It was as if someone had lit a fuse. The courtroom erupted into chaos, an explosion of gasps, cries, and disbelief. Many could not accept what they had just heard. Some gasped in horror, others flatly denied it. Breaking the limit of one's innate potential was deemed impossible. A miracle achieved by this boy. In other words, Ivar was telling them, the boy standing before them was a monster whose bounds were unknown. A monster whose path was unpredictable. In the worst-case scenario, he could grow into the greatest threat they had ever faced. That thought alone was enough to drive the masses into hysteria. Calls for his immediate execution roared through the courtroom. It wasn't just the spectators. Even some of the powerful ranked individuals seated in the special sections demanded his death. Amidst the escalating chaos, as the public sentiment heavily tilted toward one side, an old man rose from his seat and walked slowly toward the center. Every gaze fell upon him. Iris Sunlight, Chapter 222. To live or to die too. Without saying a word, his mere fiery presence gradually silenced the courtroom. The old man, with his flaming beard, chuckled lightly as he stood beside Fry. Look at yourselves, all of you, throwing your knives at this boy, desperately trying to stab him. He lifted Frey's head for all to see. Fry, however, remained utterly vacant, as if he wasn't even there. His black eyes looked completely dead. Everyone watched in heavy silence as they witnessed his face, a face radiating overwhelming despair and infinite emptiness. Tell me, what do you see? A criminal? A murderer? Iris slowly shook his head. He's nothing more than a child who hasn't even fully matured yet. The old man released Fry, shifting his attention back to everyone around him. I'm not denying that he committed a terrible act, a crime beyond question. But he's still a young man, barely at the start of his journey, not even half the age of most of you. Iris pressed forward deliberately with heavy words. Yes, he should be held accountable. Yes, he must atone for his sins. But not through death. He isn't just some ordinary individual. His talent is tremendous. He's a miracle, something the world had never seen before. We must not bury such a gift, a talent that, while it took 38 lives, could one day save countless more. With the right guidance and proper education. Surely you felt it too, didn't you? When you saw him fight. Iris pointed out something that many had overlooked. You witnessed his struggle. How he climbed from the very bottom. How he rose up to challenge monsters. And how, in the end, he became a monster himself. Frey's journey in the Victoriad. The epic that told the story of his struggle. Even if many accused him of cheating, for a brief moment, all of you saw yourselves in him. With modest talent, he carved a path toward the summit. Many imagined themselves in his place, because he resembled them. And many of the young had raised him up, declaring him their hero. His fight was never hidden. Everyone had witnessed it. Iris' words were powerful. Yet, despite this, an opposing voice rang out. You're only defending him because of his talent. You're trying to save him simply because he holds a high status. Iris' words were both true and false at the same time. Fry Starlight was no longer a youth of modest talent. He had been revealed as a monster with unknown limits. Naturally, much of the public resented Iris' defense. In their eyes, if Fry had been an ordinary killer, without talent or a powerful family, they would have executed him immediately, regardless of his age or circumstances. To them, this all reeked of pure hypocrisy. But Iris showed no sign of anger. Instead, he flashed a terrifying smile. You're absolutely right. Everyone was taken aback by his unexpected reaction. You say I'm biased because of his talent? Of course I am. Who ever said that all lives are equal? He continued, unleashing words that left the courtroom bewildered. I'm telling you, we must let him live precisely because of his talent. Because he is gifted. Because he can offer something extraordinary to this empire. That is how worth is measured here, nothing else. Morality meant little in the world they lived in. Double standards were the norm inside the empire that had survived countless horrors. A person's life depended heavily on the value they could bring to the empire. That was the truth Iris was delivering. At that moment, Ivar Valerian's eyes widened slightly as he recalled what Mikar Valerian had said on that day. His worth will determine his fate. Could this have been the Emperor's true meaning all along? Iris Sunlight declared his stance with pride, fully aware he was attracting hostility and disdain from many within the hall. Meanwhile, Ada Starlight watched how Iris had fought for her brother, with a ferocity she hadn't imagined. At last, she understood why the old man had insisted on speaking instead of her. Iris Sunlight was someone who had lived too long, who had seen too much, a truly unfathomable man. Mikar himself nodded with a faint smile, releasing his aura once more to silence the courtroom completely. Well said, Iris Sunlight, the Emperor declared. In the end, it is a man's worth that determines his fate. The audience grimaced at Mikar's direct support of Iris' stance. Iris simply nodded respectfully toward Mikar. Your wisdom is truly admirable. Your Majesty. The Lord of Sunlight gracefully stepped back, leaving the rest for the Emperor to handle. I would now like to hear the opinions of everyone present. In order, the courtroom allowed each major group to express their stance. House Starlight. Their position was made absolutely clear by Ada Starlight's powerful statement. They fully supported her brother and firmly rejected any possibility of his execution. House Moonlight. To everyone's surprise, Frost Moonlight declared that their house would remain completely neutral regarding the case. He stated that any rumors about House Moonlight seeking Frey's death were merely fabricated by certain disgruntled members of their family. The young lord of House Moonlight showed clear maturity as he declared his family's stance without hesitation. The church. They were perhaps the decisive factor, the main force that had demanded Frey's execution. Yet to everyone's shock, the church suddenly announced its neutrality. Their sudden reversal, after being so vocal in calling for Frey's death, was blatant hypocrisy. You could practically feel the suffocating frustration radiating from Bladder. But he couldn't do a thing once the hero himself declared his support for Frey Starlight out of nowhere. Since Snow Lionheart was the bearer of Vermithor, his decisions were seen as the embodiment of the will of the Lord of Light. Opposing him would mean directly opposing their god's will and completely destroying their credibility. The High Priest was finally experiencing the dark side of appointing a hero, becoming shackled to the whims of a 17-year-old boy named Snow Lionheart. Bladder quietly wondered whether it was even possible to manipulate that young man anymore, especially after gaining the constant backing of Saintess Urasha. It was a true disaster, one that brought a subtle smile to Emperor Mikar's face. The Emperor then requested the opinions of his children, since one of them would inherit the throne one day. Sansa Valerian did not hesitate. She openly and boldly voiced her full support for Frey Starlight. His execution would be the stupidest decision this empire has ever made since its founding. With that powerful declaration, having already helped dismantle the hidden forces that sought Frey's death, and cleverly securing the presence of a major influencer like Oliver Kahn at her side, Sansa had gained a significant advantage with seemingly simple moves. You claim he's just a murderer, but to me, he's the man who saved my life when no one else would. The princess spoke of how Frey had risked everything to save her inside the temple. A person like that did not deserve death. She made her stance crystal clear. Her dark eyes briefly glanced toward her brother sitting on the opposite side. Aegon Valerian sat quietly, wearing his usual smile, yet his gaze never once left Frey Starlight. This insect who had grown into a monster, whose true size even he could not yet measure. A being who had survived every attempt on his life, who had defied logic with miracle after miracle. Before Frey, for the first time, Aegon felt something he hadn't even felt toward his father, nor the Empire, nor the Ultras. Despair. The despair of facing true defeat. Frey Starlight had, quietly, become Aegon's top priority. Calmly, Aegon expressed his stance. I will remain neutral. The prince decided to play it safe. Of course, he wanted Frey dead, but he couldn't afford to be the sole open opposition. That would have been pure idiocy. Now, very clearly, almost every major power was against Frey's execution. Everyone was left bewildered at how quickly Frey's situation had turned around overnight. And it was all thanks to the old man sitting back with a satisfied smile. Iris Sunlight. He had overturned what seemed like an impossible situation in record time, showing that the terror of the old generation was not only on the battlefield, but in the political arena as well. Everyone could now feel the momentum of the court shifting completely in Frey Starlight's favor. Yet Mikar had not announced the verdict. There was still one person left whose voice had yet to be heard. That person was Frey Starlight himself. I would like to hear what the accused has to say, Mikar declared, his voice echoing throughout the silent courtroom. In other words, Mikar was giving Frey a chance to defend himself, and perhaps tip the scales fully in his favor after all the support he had gained. Finally, all attention was focused on the boy at the center. Frey Starlight, who had remained vacant and detached all this time, his eyes still staring blankly into the void. Chapter 223, A Letter to My Son. Frey Starlight's POV. So much noise, so many faces, dragged straight out of that gloomy, quiet hole and thrown into this blinding light and obnoxious noise. My head felt utterly empty. Were they holding a trial for me now? To decide whether I should live or die? No, why even bother? Just kill me already. But no, things were never that easy. Why the hell did that old man Iris defend me? What was all this bullshit they were spewing about my value determining my life? Value? What value? The value of your lives I was about to annihilate that day? I would like to hear the defendant's stance on everything that has happened so far, and what he has to say. Mikar Valerian spotlighted me completely. They wanted my testimony. They wanted to hear what I thought of this circus around me. Hadn't I made myself clear enough? Wasn't it obvious to these damned fools what I wanted? Did I really have to scream it at them? Fine then. Cough. I coughed lightly, gathering what little voice I had left. All those eyes were pinned on me as I raised my head and stared straight at the Emperor and everyone present. First of all, let me just say one thing. I took a deep breath and then spat it all out. You guys are just a bunch of bastards and bitches who don't understand the simplest thing.
Ach, I'm sorry.
I caught sight of Ada among the crowd. Everyone here's a bastard, except my sister Ada. Wait, I wasn't the real Fry, so technically her mother wasn't my mother. Ah, whatever, who cares? I'm a bastard too. And you, Mikar Valerian, are the biggest son of a bitch here. The collective shock was almost visible in the courtroom. But I wasn't finished vomiting up the rage boiling inside me. The world would be a much better place if we got rid of every last one of you sons of bitches. So how about we all just die together? Since we're all bastards anyway. Go on. Kill me. Because if not, I will personally kill you all. Saving me? Who the hell said I wanted to live in the first place? Kill me. I'm not sorry for what I did. Do I look like someone who regrets it? If I regret anything, it's that I didn't wipe you all off the face of the earth that day. Kill me. Kill me. Kill me. Kill me. Kill me. My screams of madness filled the courtroom. Confusion, fear, horror, all etched across their faces. They didn't know what to make of it. They didn't know whether to call it courage or pure, naked insanity. While I continued to scream for my death. A sudden impact cracked against the back of my skull, silencing me instantly, sending a harsh tremor through my head. The one who hit me was the last person I expected. Phoenix Sunlight, the so-called brightest talent of the previous generation. Phoenix gripped my head tightly and offered a calm apology. Forgive him. Fry Starlight is clearly not in a sound mental state right now. With a devastating punch, he made me spit blood onto the pristine floor. Allow me to discipline him for his words. Punch. Smash. Kick. I was beaten so brutally that the courtroom was almost painted with my blood. Phoenix, now covered in my blood, turned calmly to the onlookers, most of whom had no idea how the hell to react to the madness unfolding. Phoenix Sunlight remained eerily composed as he continued to hammer me down. We supreme talents tend to understand each other very, very well. He shattered the chains restraining me and grabbed me by the hair. Your Majesty, esteemed guests, allow me to be selfish for a moment. The brightest talent among them all, Phoenix Sunlight, stepped forward with his proposal. Everyone fears what Fry Starlight might become in the future, but let me ask you, does this look like someone who could threaten anyone ever again? Displaying my bloodied face to everyone, Phoenix continued. I could kill him with a single blow, break him without even lifting an arm. So how about this? His eyes burned fiercely. Leave him to me. I will personally take charge of Fry Starlight, forging him into a sword this empire can wield in the wars to come. A sword to rival his father, Abraham Starlight. The pressure surrounding Phoenix Sunlight, the Sunlight family's brightest jewel, grew heavier. And rest assured, he added coldly, if he fails, I'll kill him myself. And I'm more than capable of it. Everyone watched Phoenix standing there, holding me up effortlessly with one hand, delivering his insane offer. Mikar Valerian's expression didn't change in the slightest, not even after the way I had publicly insulted him. He simply nodded. Are you confident you can handle him? Phoenix responded without hesitation. On my honor, as a proud warrior of House Sunlight. Then it is decided. Mikar's hand slammed onto the table, his voice final. Fry Starlight shall be imprisoned within Alcatraz, the prison of time, for 3 months. After that, he will return to the temple under Phoenix Sunlight's direct supervision. I grant you full authority. The courtroom was stunned. Whether it was Phoenix's stance, the mention of Alcatraz, or the fact that Fry Starlight would actually survive. Everything had shifted. Mikar had made his decision. From the very beginning, he had never intended to kill me. How could he? When another Abraham Starlight had appeared right before his eyes. Just as the father had fought in the War of Light, so too would the son fight in the war to come. Mikar had seen too much of history, and history was about to repeat itself. In a surreal twist, the trial finally came to an end. The trial was over. Everything was done. At one point, things had been teetering dangerously toward disaster. You could see it in the expressions of Fry Starlight's allies. How Ada Starlight and Iris Sunlight nearly collapsed from sheer panic, when that mad young man nearly destroyed everything. If not for Phoenix Sunlight's desperate intervention, it would have been a catastrophe. Fry was saved. Saved from all those who wanted him dead. But who? Who would save him from the greatest danger of all? Who would save him from himself? After the trial, Fry Starlight was temporarily returned to the Starlight estate, awaiting transfer to Alcatraz. Alcatraz, the worst prison in the Northern Empire. A place cursed with powerful magic that warped perception of time, making days feel like endless years, while prisoners were subjected to daily inhuman torture. 3 months inside that hellhole felt like an eternity. Ada Starlight was devastated when her brother's sentence was announced. But to Fry, it meant nothing. What could 3 months of torture possibly change for someone like him? It all seemed laughably insignificant. Fry Starlight refused to interact with anyone. No matter who tried to reach him, he gave no response. He was nothing more than an empty vessel, staggering silently before their eyes. Phoenix had saved him today. He had vowed to rehabilitate him. But what could he fill Fry with when there was nothing left inside? Even death had been stripped from him by Balerian's cursed restraint. Now, Fry was just a hollow young man, sitting there alone, on the same stadium bed, where everything had once begun. He lay back, staring blankly at the ceiling. The same ceiling he had seen when he first awakened in this hell. 2 years had passed since that day. 2 years in hell. And now he had returned to square one. But this time, with no goal, no hope, he sat there, alone. In that moment, far away from where he was. Author's Tools. Level 2 progress, 100%. The personal laptop vanished into thin air, disappearing completely. At the same time, a small dot appeared in the air before Frey's empty eyes. A glowing blue dot. The young man slowly stood up, staring at the light. Those dead eyes. Eyes that wished for nothing but death. Slowly, Fry reached out and touched the point with a single finger, and a strange interface unfolded before him. It was the status window he had seen so many times in his previous life, that classic, cliché system window that appeared so often in stories. The laptop was gone, leaving behind only this interface. There, written in bold letters. Author's Tools, Level 2. Additional features and capabilities have been unlocked. Please review them. Frey's expression didn't change in the slightest as he stared at the new functions. They all seemed meaningless to him now. Got rid of the cursed laptop just to get this. The engineer was stubborn. Unbelievably stubborn. Fry Starlight was about to close the interface forever, never intending to open it again. But something caught his eye. A section at the bottom of the screen flashing faintly, as if it was calling to him. Look at me. There, a single line was recorded. Recorded message, Abraham Starlight. Fry frowned. He couldn't even comprehend what he was reading, wondering if he had misunderstood the words. Abraham Starlight, the mysterious man, had left behind a message inside the system. At this point, Fry no longer understood anything. He simply clicked on it, wanting to know what that man, the one he knew nothing about, had left for him. The moment he pressed it, a magical sound echoed across the room. A voice that stirred Frey's dead heart, forcing his eyes wide open. Hello, my son. Just 2 words. But Fry jolted violently, his lips trembling. It's been a long, long time. You don't know how much I missed you, how badly I wanted to see you again. The voice of Abraham Starlight, a man Fry was never supposed to have any connection to. The voice was strong, warm, gentle, and heartbreakingly kind. The very thing he had longed to hear his entire life. That voice. It was a voice he had heard countless times. If you're hearing this now, it means you've already come a long way. You've endured suffering I can't even imagine. He paused. Fry muttered under his breath, his whole body trembling. Don't use that voice. He shook violently. Don't torture me any more than this. Because that voice belonged to. Before I tell you everything, I need to confess something, my son. You have no idea how shocked I was when I opened my eyes in this world. No, you have no idea how stunned I was to find myself inside the very novel you used to tell me about. My son. Fry collapsed to the ground the moment he heard those words. It felt like a gift from you, as if you had given me a second chance to live. I searched for you everywhere, believing with all my heart that I would find you. I fought, carried a sword I had never wielded before. Kneeling on the ground, Fry Starlight listened to his father's voice, tears exploding from his dead eyes. It felt like his chest was being ripped apart. His heart shattered again and again. I'm sorry, my son. I know how much you've suffered. But please, allow me to tell you my story. Haha. I really was a terrible father, wasn't I? No! Fry choked on his tears and screamed. You were the best father I ever had. Better than I ever deserved. He screamed from the depths of his soul. But it was useless. The recording could not hear him, could only move forward. I know you've suffered more than anyone. I know you're broken into pieces, but look at how far you've come. My son, you have no idea how proud I am of you. The words shook Fray's very soul. You deserve it, son. You deserve to know the truth. So let me show you. Without warning, a blinding light engulfed Fry Starlight, a light that transported him elsewhere. Let me show you where it all began. The light swallowed him whole, carrying him away into Abraham Starlight's memories, into the beginning of everything. Chapter 224, Memories of the Fallen Star 1. Fry Starlight's POV. Come. To the place where it all began. My father's words, they still echoed through my mind, even as the blinding light swallowed me whole, ripping me away from where I stood. I felt the world around me twist and shift at a dizzying pace. This was my father's memories. With bloodshot eyes, I followed the sound of his voice, the voice that stirred something long dead inside me. Warmth surged in my chest as I found myself standing in a wide, dimly lit room. A single cradle sat at its center, bathed in the soft silver glow of the moon filtering through the window. Inside the cradle, a small infant slept, his hair as black as ink. He looked just like me, just like Fry. As I gazed at the tiny figure, my father's voice came alive again. When I opened my eyes for the first time, I found myself inside the body of a newborn. I kept staring at the sleeping baby. Father's reincarnation was nothing like mine. Had he truly lived his second life from the very beginning as Abraham Starlight? Ignoring my swirling thoughts, I focused again on his voice. At first, I was lost. I thought it was a dream, but dreams don't last this long. Days passed before my eyes. I saw a man and a woman, both with black hair, caring for the child with overwhelming tenderness and love. They must have been from one of the Starlight family's branch lines. In other words, my grandparents. Once it became clear I wasn't dreaming, I realized I'd been reborn. A new body, a new family, a new reality. But the same memories. I watched as the tiny Abraham grew, day by day. I laughed quietly when I saw him stumble through his first steps, and grumble in frustration when he couldn't even manage the simplest things. I witnessed every moment while my father's voice, warm and familiar, narrated it all, and deep down, a part of me wished he'd never stop speaking. Even as I came to terms with my fate, I could never forget the final moments of my previous life. That blinding light, that moment when everything fell apart. Father, he never forgot. He never forgot us. That's why, the moment I was old enough, I began searching for you, trying to uncover the truth behind it all. From the time he could walk and speak properly, Father began learning about this strange new world he had been thrown into. And with the knowledge of a grown man trapped in a child's body, he learned at an inhuman pace. I was stunned to discover that people in this world wielded supernatural powers, living in a bizarre era that fused medieval and modern times together. Father consumed knowledge at an alarming rate, and the deeper he dug, the more he recognized the world he was now part of. As I pieced things together, learning the names of the great houses, the territories, the history, I realized I was living inside your story, the one you used to tell me, over and over again, just for fun. By the time he turned 4 years old, he knew. He was inside the novel his eldest son once created. For me, it felt like your gift, a second life given after the first was torn away. And when I realized that, something else appeared before me. Just as his voice said so, I watched as a glowing point of light materialized before the 4-year-old Abraham. The moment he touched it, an interface, a system, unfolded before him. I blinked in confusion. It wasn't the author's tools I was familiar with. It was something completely different. A strange system window appeared, showing my stats, my level, like I was in some kind of game. Abraham Starlight, Level 1. It was nothing like the one I had received. The system gave me missions. Completing them earned me experience points, which I could then use to level up. Every time he leveled up, he could enhance one of his attributes. Strength, speed, and even his innate talent. Thinking about it carefully, Father had been given one of those classic, game-like systems often seen in novels. Simple, practical, ruthless. And back then, I foolishly believed you were there, watching me from behind that transparent screen. He truly, wholeheartedly believed that I was the one who had given him everything. And so, using all the experience from his previous life, and that strange system that had appeared before him, he threw himself into training, completing every mission assigned to him. Days passed quickly as Abraham Starlight lived quietly in one of the Starlight family's branch houses. The branch families were marginalized, living far away from the chaos of the main house. Because of that, Father grew up in a peaceful, healthy environment. He lived his second life to the fullest. I made sure to treasure every second, training harder, living better. As a tribute to the gift you gave me, his strength grew at an alarming pace, unnoticed by the world. Day after day, Abraham Starlight trained with a sword, cutting again and again. At a young age, he awakened the Starlight family's basic light affinity, earning the right to learn their secret combat style, the Stardust technique. When my parents in this world gave me that technique, I saw the sorrow in their eyes. The Stardust technique was powerful, forming stars around the heart. Each star drastically boosted the user's power and enabled devastating attacks. However, the branch families were suppressed for generations. They were only allowed to cultivate the technique up to the 4th star. Beyond that, they needed specialized secret methods. Methods that the main family kept tightly locked away. I understood then. My parents were sad because they could only give me an incomplete technique. But even so, it was enough, because the system he had received would forcefully break through the limits they couldn't. I was grateful for their love and support, but no matter how much I tried, I could never truly see them as my real parents. It was impossible. After all, my real father's age far exceeded theirs. And so, the relationship between them stayed ambiguous. Parents who loved their son, and a son who saw them only as strangers. Time flew by. I watched my father reach 15 years old. And looking at him, he looked exactly like me when I first arrived in this world. Father's voice continued narrating his journey. After spending years completing the system's endless missions, sometimes hard, sometimes twisted, sometimes outright bizarre. A new idea began to form in my mind. At first, he believed that completing the missions would eventually lead him to me. But they never stopped. That's when I realized the entity behind the missions wasn't you. It was something else entirely. The world resembled the one I once described to him, yes. But some things didn't match. Still, Abraham Starlight never gave up the dream of finding his family. Even knowing he was walking blind, he thought long and hard about how to reach us. Finally, he came to a conclusion. When I turned 15, my parents offered to send me to the Temple Academy, since I had the talent for it, but I refused. The thought of living a normal school life again didn't appeal to him. He wanted to stay hidden, out of sight. My plan was simple. I would train in secret, pushing my strength to its limit. When the time came, I would make a name for myself so loud and clear that my real family would recognize me. He would remain hidden. He would train like a madman. And when he became famous enough, he would send a message only his real family could understand. That was the whole plan. It was then that I finally understood why Father's name had echoed across the empire. Abraham Starlight, the miracle, the third lord of the Starlight family, the strongest of his era. All of it, for one reason alone. I just wanted to find my family. Hearing those words, something twisted painfully inside me. Me and my father. Fry Starlight and Abraham Starlight. We were the same. Both of us had done everything for the same exact reason. Father remained hidden from the world for years. I watched him train endlessly, awakening the high star affinity. His power grew monstrously fast. It got to the point where his very body structure began to change. He was turning into something else altogether. At that level, the system often sent him into the nightmare lands, forcing him to trigger major events from the shadows. Father executed them all perfectly, without leaving a single trace behind. Abraham Starlight, level 70, age 20. At just 20 years old, Father's strength was already comparable to those at the SS rank of our world. He possessed a completely different perspective than I did. His method of training was something I had never even thought about. A hellish regimen that allowed him to control his aura so perfectly, he abandoned the concept of internal aura pathways altogether. He simply let the raw force flow freely inside him without restrictions. Kept wondering, how did he even manage it? What kind of pain did he endure to survive his own power burning his internal organs, relying only on the system's force to keep himself alive? He had achieved something that even I, the very author who created this world, thought impossible. On another front, after wandering the world and completing countless system missions, Father noticed something else. After observing this world long enough, after piecing together all the scattered clues, I became certain I hadn't been transported to another world. As I had said before, Father was sharp, unbelievably sharp. Something like this could never escape his attention. This is the same world we once lived in, but far in the future. Chapter 225, Memories of the Fallen Star 2. He realized the truth I had spent 2 long years trying to uncover. But unlike me, Father didn't despair. Instead, he grew even more determined, more certain that he would eventually find us. In his heart, he believed he wasn't the only one who had been given a second chance at life. He believed that fate had distributed chances equally among all our family members. And so, he pressed forward. Then, at the moment he fully accepted the reality of the world he lived in, a mission arrived from the system, a final mission, one that commanded him to enter the Eastern Nightmare Lands and reach its very end. I knew immediately this task was on a completely different level from anything I'd faced before. At the time, the Nightmare Lands were ruled by 4 Nightmare Lords, not 3 as in my era. Each one was a monstrous entity whose strength exceeded the SS plus rank. Not to mention the endless swarms of nightmare creatures that roamed the lands. But none of that stopped Father. He took only a single sword, packed enough rations into a dimensional ring to survive a while, and set off on his journey. unlike me, who had been thrown directly into the nightmare lands. Father entered through the eastern Aklas mountains and pushed forward in search of the truth. The mission asked only that he reach the end of the eastern nightmare lands. But it gave no further instructions. Was he simply meant to cross the continent? Or was there something specific he needed to accomplish? Father had no way of knowing, so he made the only logical choice. He would explore the nightmare lands fully until he found the answer. Days passed, then weeks. I wandered for a long time across the nightmare lands. During my time there, I killed countless nightmare creatures and nearly died dozens of times myself. He faced every imaginable monstrosity, from beasts with razor-sharp limbs to humanoid abominations to horrors that attacked the mind itself. One particular battle caught my attention more than the others. One day, a thick fog engulfed Father, causing him to hallucinate violently. From my perspective, I clearly saw the entity haunting him, a massive figure draped in black robes, its brain exposed atop its head. Empty, hollow sockets where eyes should have been, and a mouth full of jagged teeth. It circled Father like a predator ready to strike. I shuddered when I realized I had once faced this thing too. Had I really survived something like that? Father was seconds away from falling into its illusion, but his quick thinking saved him. I watched, stunned, as he stabbed himself through the side with his own sword, using the intense pain to anchor his mind and resist the hallucination. It was a brilliant move, especially since he hadn't discovered the easier method of simply closing his eyes. Once free from the illusion, Father unleashed his true power. 8 blazing stars spinning violently around his heart. A strength comparable to the second lord of the Starlight family at the time. And with a single devastating slash of his sword, he unleashed a wave of blinding light. One that obliterated the Mist Stalker in an instant. Seeing the destruction he left behind as he stumbled back, panting heavily, I realized once again just how terrifyingly powerful my father truly was. The journey continued. I was merely a third-person observer, drifting rapidly from scene to scene, barely noticing the passage of time. Until I caught sight of the thick, rugged beard growing on Father's face. His voice soon confirmed it. 6 months inside the nightmare lands. 6 months of blood, filth, and fighting the unknown. And yet the mission still stands, just as it did on the first day. In half a year, thanks to the fact that he had reached the SS rank and developed skills far beyond anyone his age, Father had already explored most of the eastern nightmare lands, facing almost every type of creature lurking there. All of them, except for one. I kept avoiding it, hoping I wouldn't have to confront it. I watched from afar, as one of the worst nightmare creatures I'd ever seen revealed itself before me. A monster I hadn't even written about, a being even I knew nothing about. The nightmare lords I had created numbered only 3. That's what I wrote. That's what I believed. But the thing that now stood before me was not one of them. Its roar was unlike anything I'd ever heard. A scream of sorrow, rage, and hatred. The sound alone made my throat dry up. It was a hulking beast, its body covered in thick, black fur, with 2 horns sprouting from its skull like a twisted crown. His face, or what should have been its face, was nothing but a hollow cavity where a mind should have been. The creature clutched its head and screamed again, a desperate, agonized cry that seemed to shake the very heavens. It was almost as if it was pleading to all who heard it. Give me back my brain. Give me back what was stolen from me. That was the message I instinctively understood. And it was the same realization that struck Father. This creature was Amygdala, one of the nightmare lords. Father whispered its name, his voice heavy, as he drew the battered, scarred sword that had accompanied him through countless battles. To be honest, I wondered if I could even kill it. Father leapt high into the air, 8 stars igniting fiercely around his heart. The light of the stars flared brilliantly, piercing through the eternal darkness of the nightmare lands. I didn't know if I could kill it, But I knew I had no choice. To move even a step closer to his goal. He had to fight, even if it cost him his life. The battle between Abraham Starlight and Amygdala was a catastrophe on every level. The black behemoth let out a roar that shook the earth, spewing waves of black fire that consumed the sky itself. A wave of darkness, cleaved clean in half by Father's blade. With a monstrous battle cry, Father hurled himself straight into the heart of hell, crashing into Amygdala's overwhelming darkness. This monster, this nightmare, scorched mountains, rivers, and forests with flames that could never be extinguished. And still, the light of the stars shone defiantly within the endless blackness. Father's blade tore into Amygdala's filthy flesh, but the creature's regenerative power was horrifying. No matter how deep the wounds, kept fighting. Driven not by thought, but by pure, mindless instinct. It continued to spew black fire from every inch of its body. I watched as Father cloaked himself in the aura of the stars, desperately struggling to survive. A single white dot against a canvas of endless black. They clashed over and over for what felt like eternity. 3 days passed. Their battle shook the very foundations of the world. Amygdala wasn't an SS Plus level monster for nothing. I couldn't understand how Father survived that hellish onslaught. Nor could I fathom how no one else noticed. Given the sheer scale of the aura disturbances they unleashed. The battle was not in Father's favor. Amygdala was a force of nature. A walking cataclysm. Those black flames didn't just erupt from its mouth. They surged from its entire body, threatening to reduce everything to ash. And in the middle of it all, Father's light continued to shine. Were it not for the fact that he had shattered his aura pathways and allowed his body to harness aura freely, Che would have been vaporized long ago. The fight reached a deadlock. Amygdala, covered in thousands of wounds, refused to fall. On the other side, after 3 straight days of brutal combat, Father had reached his absolute limit. And so, gathering every last shred of strength he had left, he leapt high into the sky, unleashing one final suicidal attack. He gathered every ounce of star-dust aura he could muster around his crumbling blade, and struck. At the same time, Amygdala unleashed a tidal wave of black fire to meet him. When white and black collided, the world turned dark. Father's sword shattered, but it pierced through Amygdala. From the other side, he too fell into the flames, losing consciousness. The battle ended in a way that left me wondering. Who had actually won? A cold sweat drenched my back after witnessing the hellish battle I had just seen. Was this what it truly meant to face an SS Plus ranked nightmare? Amygdala was far stronger than I had ever imagined. Father said, I had to drain every last ounce of my power just to survive. It was a close fight. Death brushed right past me. Everything turned black as Father fell unconscious. I waited patiently, anxiously hoping for him to wake up so I could finally see the result. After that battle, I don't even know what happened. His voice echoed again. My mind was a complete mess from the exhaustion and the wounds I'd suffered during the fight. He drifted in and out of consciousness, barely able to open his eyes before being pulled back into the darkness. Normally, he should have died. Even if he had succeeded in killing Amygdala, the nightmare beasts would have surely devoured his body down to the bones. But that didn't happen. I watched in shock as Father's battered body was dragged away, among the ruins of death and destruction, where Amygdala's corpse now lay motionless after Father's final attack. They came. When I opened my eyes again, what greeted me was stranger than any dream. There, lying atop the cold, hard ground of that ancient sect, dragged all the way to that black mountain, the same mountain where I had once bled out and nearly died, the place that still remained a mystery to me even now. Abraham Starlight woke up, inside the Shadow Sect. Chapter 226. Memories of the Fallen Star 3. His world turned upside down as his senses slowly returned. It's him, isn't it? It has to be him. We've waited so long. When Father regained consciousness, He wasn't alone. A strange boy hovered excitedly around him. It's really him. The boy looked about 10 years old, drowning inside a shirt far too big for him, bright blue eyes sparkling with life. He shouted happily when he saw Abraham. It's him, right, sis? He turned excitedly toward another figure. That's when Father noticed her. A woman with dark skin and jet black hair, her muscular build the very definition of a warrior. With a deep frown, she muttered, "Is this really the one we've waited all this time for?" "Of course it is." "Calm down, you're scaring him." More figures appeared. A man with long black hair and black eyes, carrying a massive spear strapped to his back. An old man, hobbling along with a cane, barely able to keep himself upright. They all surrounded Father, staring at him intently. Their eyes held everything. Longing, respect, obsession, admiration, and awe. Father was confused. And truthfully, so was I. No matter how hard I searched my memory, I couldn't recognize a single one of them. At that moment, I heard Father's voice once more. That day, when they surrounded me, I wasn't scared by them, but I was terrified by the fact that I couldn't sense a single thing from any of them. After reaching SS rank, Father had developed an acute instinct, an ability to instantly gauge the strength of others, even those stronger than himself like amygdala. But now, nothing. He couldn't read these people at all. "Who are you? And how did I end up here?" The moment he spoke, they all backed away, giving him space. "See? You scared him. It's not my fault. He probably freaked out because of your black skin, sis." "What did you just say?" Father shivered as the woman delivered a devastating punch to the boy, unleashing a shockwave so powerful it shattered everything within its reach. And yet, the boy stood there, completely unharmed. "That's enough, Evankel. You're the one scaring him. Even you." Those strange people began bickering amongst themselves. They looked like nothing more than a bunch of lunatics. Madmen loitering inside the shadow sect, surrounded by the nightmare lands. Both Father and I, we felt the same void while watching them. And as their argument escalated, a voice came from behind. A voice that made everyone fall silent. A voice that froze me in place and darkened my face. Everyone turned at once. As he appeared, the man shrouded in black, his glassy blue eyes glowing ominously, just like before. The only difference I noticed was, he now had 2 arms instead of 1. "That bastard! Step away from him!" the engineer ordered, his voice cold and absolute. "He's not the one you've been waiting for." The atmosphere shifted instantly. Those who had seemed like a bunch of reckless fools just moments ago, their entire presence changed in an instant, becoming something monstrous. They didn't unleash any visible aura, but the void itself seemed to tremble around them as they glared at the engineer with seething anger. "What the hell are you saying? He's not the one we've waited for?" Evankel clenched her fist, stepping forward, pointing furiously at the engineer. "Didn't you say the time had come? The one we've been waiting for all these years? If this isn't him, then why gather us here?" "Damn you!" Their rage boiled over. "I told you never to trust him. He's not even human." Despite the surging tension, the engineer remained perfectly calm, as if none of it could touch him. In a simple, detached tone, he spoke again. "This man is the key to his arrival." He pointed at Abraham Starlight, continuing coldly, "He is necessary." I could see the confusion written on all their faces. Meanwhile, Father instinctively leapt back, widening the distance between them. He didn't attempt to run. Somewhere deep down, he already understood escape was impossible against them. "Who the hell are you people?" he demanded. "What were you mumbling about earlier?" "The key. The one you've been waiting for? What kind of bullshit is this?" Everyone stared at Abraham, and the one who answered was none other than the engineer himself. "You don't need to know that right now," he said. "Abraham Starlight, you want to find them. don't you? Your family. That's why you kept completing every task until now. Father's expression stiffened as realization began to dawn on him. You're the one behind the system, aren't you? In response, the engineer simply opened a screen in the air. Written boldly across it were the words Father had been longing to see ever since entering the Nightmare Lands. Final mission. Reach the end of the Eastern Nightmare Lands. Completed. He had completed the task. And now it was time to claim his reward. You fulfilled your mission perfectly, the engineer said. Now claim your prize. In addition to an enormous amount of experience points, the engineer gestured toward the woman. Evankhel, give it to him. Evankhel hesitated for a moment before sighing heavily. With a flare of aura between her hands, something materialized. A black, cursed sword, a katana radiating an overwhelming, ominous power. Take it. With clear reluctance, Evankhel tossed the sword toward Abraham Starlight, who instinctively caught it midair. The moment he touched the scabbard, Father felt it. The overwhelming power contained within that blade. Even I stared at it in awe, recognizing its distinctive features immediately. It was one of the 7 legendary swords, the Dark Sister. You have no idea how much I suffered to reclaim that sword from that bastard Avalon. Evankhel grumbled. And now you want me to hand it over to some random guy? She glared, while the boy floating beside her chuckled. Not like you ever needed it anyway. You're an archer, not a swordswoman. Father ignored their bickering for a moment, focusing instead on the sword in his hands. Then looking straight at the engineer. You, what exactly are you? What's your connection to me? What do you want from me? Everything was a mystery to Abraham. But surprisingly, the engineer responded plainly. I am nothing more than an ancient will. And what I want from you, he said coldly, is for you to finish your mission, to prepare the perfect vessel for his arrival. Nothing more. Vessel? Vessel for what? The engineer did not respond. Meanwhile, the others, those strange beings who shared his kind, beings like him, stared at him in complete silence. Father wanted the truth behind everything that was happening, and what it had to do with him and the story his son once told him. Gripping the Dark Sister tightly, Father's 8-star aura ignited. The full might of the Stardust technique surging within him. He prepared to strike. You're going to tell me the truth, he growled. Even if I have to smash that strange face of yours to pieces. Father had had enough. Enough of the riddles. Enough of the confusion that kept piling up around him. So he decided. If the truth wouldn't come to him, he would tear it out by force. Harnessing the terrifying power of the Dark Sister, his aura exploded violently as he lunged toward the engineer, releasing a monstrous amount of power that shook the entire space around them. The others present could not hide their surprise at his level. That man!
No aura patoué.
What Father had achieved. Mastering the legendary sword so seamlessly on his first attempt was astounding even for them. With a devastating strike, Abraham aimed straight at the engineer, intending to kill, but just before his blade could reach, it stopped, as if time itself had frozen. You are still unworthy to fight at this level. The engineer's hand ignited with cold blue flames as he moved. Too fast. Father didn't even see him coming. With a single touch to his chest, Father felt a burning surge of power rip through him, and his consciousness began to fade. You wish to meet him, don't you? Your son. The engineer's voice echoed faintly in his mind, just before darkness claimed him. Then continue what you started, Abraham Starlight, until the appointed day comes. Father collapsed unconscious at the engineer's feet. The engineer, unfazed, turned his attention back to the others gathered around him. I summoned you all today to discuss the next phase, to complete the preparations. Everyone listened intently, still shaken after what they just witnessed. The day we've all been waiting for is near, the engineer said, and there can be no mistakes. I will not allow another failure like Cheon Ma. No one dared to speak, especially after hearing the engineer mention that name. Cheon Ma, the engineer, usually so mechanical, so void of emotion, had, for once, let a flicker of feeling slip into his words. Longing, anticipation, a hunger for a moment he could no longer delay. That day, the preparations were completed for what was coming next. Chapter 227, Memories of the Fallen Star, 4. Fry Starlight's POV. Within the Eastern Nightmare Lands, inside the walls of the mysterious Shadow Sect, Abraham Starlight lay unconscious, defeated by the engineer in a single blow. What happened was shocking, even to me, the very person who had once written a novel about this world in excruciating detail. Alongside the engineer, I memorized the faces of the others, and decided that no matter what, I would never forget them. A dark-skinned woman, with black hair and a body so sculpted that her abs were clearly visible. Evankhel, the previous wielder of the Dark Sister sword, perhaps the blade was even named after her. A boy who looked no older than 10, with golden hair and vibrant blue eyes. A man with long black hair, standing perfectly straight, with a massive spear strapped to his back. An old, withered man, almost bald, leaning heavily on a cane. I would remember them. I would remember every single one of them. The scenes flashed quickly as my father awoke once more, only to find himself lying there, alone. The Shadow Sect had fallen silent again, and the others had vanished without a trace. It felt as if everything I'd seen and heard that night was just a fleeting dream, but that sword proved otherwise, gripping the Dark Sister tightly. A pitch-black katana pulsing with immense power, Abraham realized that what he had experienced was real. It was no hallucination. Where will this path take me? Was following that strange system really the right choice? A journey into the unknown. That's exactly what it was. But my father didn't waver. He simply continued doing what he had always done. He returned to the Starlight Branch family's lands and resumed his training. He lived his daily life to its fullest, blending in naturally with the world as if he had been born into it, as if he hadn't lived a completely different life before. Everyone around him saw him as a mature young man, far wiser and more composed than his age should allow, and he gained deep respect, all while hiding the true extent of his strength. Stronger. I knew I had to become much, much stronger. Even when he thought he had enough power, the engineer's effortless defeat had shown him otherwise. He knew better than anyone. No one could predict what the future would bring, nor what challenges awaited. Abraham Starlight, Level 90, age 25 years, Stardust Technique, 9th star. Leveling up had grown excruciatingly difficult. My father finally faced the ultimate wall at SS Plus rank. The gap between SS and SS Plus was monstrous. So wide it shattered the ambitions of even the most gifted talents. And beyond SS Plus lay only the unknown. At the age of 25, he finally made his decision. To send the signal, to find my family, I decided to conquer the world. 25 years of training since his childhood. 25 years of wielding the sword, fighting without pause. And now he was ready to reveal himself to the world. The first step was the Starlight family. Being one of the Empire's most powerful factions, it was the perfect starting point. Thus, on that day, Abraham Starlight packed his belongings, said goodbye to his false family, and set out toward the eastern Aklas Mountains, the stronghold of the Starlight family. There were many tales later told about that day, a day when a young man appeared at the gates of the mighty Starlight family, demanding a duel with the strongest warrior within. The gatekeepers mocked him. Black hair? A branch family fool? What the hell are you doing here? They jeered, slapping him on the back condescendingly. You better leave before you get yourself hurt. With a single glance, my father assessed them. Mere B-rank insects crawling before him. I wish to challenge the strongest man of this house. From what I've heard, that would be the current lord. Could you kindly direct me to him? Even as the guards burst out laughing at the nonsense spoken by this strange young man, Abraham maintained his calm. They tried to shove him away, but he stood his ground. Please. One last time he asked politely. When they tried to forcefully remove him, they made the greatest mistake of their lives. I watched with a blank expression as my father fought dozens of guards at once. I saw him send them all flying with a single blow. Without even drawing his sword. I asked nicely. Boom! The front gate shattered into pieces as the alarm bell echoed across the Aklas Mountains. An alarm signaling that a disaster had befallen them. You draw your swords against me. Don't you realize these weapons are meant to kill? Boom! More bodies were sent soaring. So you want to kill me, is that it? Boom! Cold sweat trickled down my back when I saw my father hurl one of Starlight's strongest generals clear over a massive mountain like a mere punching bag. Since you want to kill me, then it's only fair I respond in kind. That night, for the first time in Starlight's history, the threat came not from the Nightmare Lands, but from within the Empire itself. After crushing the faces of an absurd number of Starlight family warriors, the true elites finally began to appear one by one. The Senate, a council of powerful fighters ranked S and above, descended upon him. Among them, a woman resembling a wild beast charged forward, launching a devastating punch straight at my father. 7 stars of the Stardust technique blazed around her heart as she attacked. But my father caught her fist, effortlessly nullifying her attack completely. Looking closer, I was stunned to recognize her. Carmen Starlight. She looked exactly the same as when I had last seen her. Was that even possible? This was supposed to have happened long ago, yet Carmen hadn't changed at all. As if it had just happened yesterday. Carmen Starlight was a sharp woman. I knew it the moment our fists collided. My father's voice echoed through the memories as I watched him face 9 elders of the Starlight family alone. Yet even against that number of elite-class powerhouses, he didn't lose. Who are you? What do you want? They all shouted at him in unison, even as their battle laid waste to everything around them. I simply wish to face your strongest. I didn't come here to cause trouble. I didn't even kill your guards, only knocked them unconscious. He wasn't lying. Sure, he beat them half to death, but he hadn't killed a single one. Are you playing with us? I watched Carmen lunge at him with terrifying speed, but he dodged effortlessly, brushing her aside with casual ease. Calm down and think. If I really wanted to kill you, you'd all be dead already. What the hell are you saying? Boom! From the beginning, he never even drew his sword. He fought them all with nothing but his fists, continuing to beat them into the ground. Carmen wasn't stupid. She realized the gap in power the moment she clashed with him. The strange young man before her was on an entirely different level. Pressure heavier than anything she'd ever felt, even compared to the Starlight Lord himself. But she couldn't retreat, not in front of an enemy like this. The 9 elders launched their strongest coordinated attacks at him. But he blocked every one of them with ease. They were relentless, especially Carmen, who fought tirelessly at the front. Eventually, all of them collapsed under his relentless assault. All except her. Her stubbornness made my father serious for the first time. What a stubborn woman! Forming a blazing white flame around his right fist, my father disappeared, reappearing before Carmen at the speed of light. His punch exploded toward her face, and in that instant, she felt the overwhelming aura pouring from the blow. She saw death rushing toward her. But just before it landed, his fist stopped a hair's breadth from her face. The shockwave alone obliterated everything behind her, leaving a massive fist-shaped crater in the giant mountain behind her. Carmen's legs gave out and she collapsed before him. Glancing at the imprint on the mountain, she realized she had never been closer to death than she was that day. Will you listen now? Or do I need to do more? After obliterating the Senate like they were mere toys, they finally realized the magnitude of the threat standing before them. What do you want? I've repeated myself so many times that my mouth's about to fall off. I want to face your strongest. The strongest in the family. The moment he uttered those words, a beam of light descended behind Abraham, as if answering his call. From within the beam, two elderly men emerged, unleashing their overwhelming auras. Though the marks of old age were evident on their faces, their bodies radiated a terrifying level of strength as they stood tall like spears challenging the heavens. They looked alike, a clear sign that a deep bond connected them. What's going on here? Both were strong, but the true monster was the elder standing at the front. That pressure. So you're the current lord of the Starlight family. Chapter 228. Memories of the Fallen Star 5. The two elders were none other than the former Lord Isan Starlight and his younger brother. The same face I had seen before. Leonidas Starlight. The latter's light was faint compared to his brother's. And who are you? Lord Isan, with his long white hair and aged face, stared at my father, ready to strike at any moment. Facing that crushing pressure, my father answered calmly. Abraham Starlight, from the Branch family. You could see the shock flash across the former lord's face. Why would a member of the Branch family attack the main house? Isan spoke as he drew his sword, unleashing a pressure that was no joke. I haven't attacked anyone. I simply wish to fight you. Despite the overwhelming force bearing down on him, my father didn't flinch. And why would you want that? To test myself. Without any warning, he unsheathed Darksister and pointed it directly at Isan Starlight. The old lord immediately unleashed his full strength, summoning 8 stars of the Stardust technique. Yet even he broke into a heavy sweat when he saw his opponent manifest a 9th star. Their swords clashed violently, their strikes splitting mountains and leveling the earth. Isan Starlight was a monster at the very peak of SS rank, one of the strongest in the world at that time. But against Abraham Starlight, who had already stepped into SS plus rank and wielded Darksister, the old lord never stood a chance. After a fierce and wild exchange of blows, Isan Starlight fell to one knee before Abraham, his sword completely shattered. Meanwhile, my father stood tall, unharmed, and scathed, utterly pristine. Abraham Starlight had won, decisively. This is the end. He sheathed his sword and slowly stepped back. That day, news spread like wildfire of a man who had toppled the Starlight family by himself. Everyone wondered, who was this man? They thought they'd never see him again, assuming he was just some ghost provoked by the Starlights. But they were shocked when they saw him casually wandering among the Branch families afterward. It made no sense. I remember when the Lord of the Starlight family himself came looking for me. At first, things were tense between them. But after getting to know my father's true nature, everything changed. He gained the deep interest of the old lord, especially after Isan learned that Abraham Starlight had never intended any harm. I often sat down with that old man, exchanging conversation. He had lived for over 100 years. And for someone like me who had lived longer than most people here, I found myself learning from him. For the first time, my father, who was always older in spirit than those around him, found someone who had lived far longer. Every time Isan met Abraham, his admiration grew deeper. He repeatedly tried to pry the secret of my power from me, asking how I reached the 9th star of the Stardust technique. But I couldn't tell him about the system. So I simply said I figured it out through relentless training. A 25-year-old man who reached the 9th star. A feat not accomplished since Nova Starlight, the first lord, who had achieved 10 stars before his death. Abraham Starlight grew into a colossal mystery. A force that drew countless eyes. Then there was Carmen. That woman constantly messed with me. She often challenged him, either trying to kill him or sparring for fun. Especially after that incident. During that period, tensions between the Empire and the Ultras were constantly flaring, and one day, a full-scale assault was launched by one of the Lords of the Ultras, Gavid Lindman. That day, Carmen Starlight would have died had it not been for Abraham intervening and saving her. He utterly crushed Gavid Lindman, and the latter barely managed to escape with his life. That event forged a strange bond between my father and Carmen. A bond that was suspiciously friendly. It made me wonder, what kind of woman had Carmen been before I ever truly knew her, especially considering she already had a child. One day, I saw a memory of my father's where Carmen had invited him to her house. I walked in with a blank face as I watched the scene unfold. The moment they entered, Carmen fiddled with a few bottles. "How about a drink, Abraham?" Holding bottles of fine liquor, her intentions were painfully obvious. But my father simply shook his head. "No, thank you. I don't drink." That was the father I knew. A man so upright it almost hurt. His polite refusal made Carmen pout. Turning down an offer from an older lady, huh? Smiling slightly, my father played along. "I never said I wouldn't drink with you. We could always have tea instead." Wow, the great Abraham Starlight who toppled an entire family. A tea lover? You sound like an old man. He wasn't the monster I'd seen that day. He was just a simple young man, carrying the weight of years he hadn't even lived yet. Carmen was much older than him, yet she didn't feel that gap at all when she was around him. Despite all her grumbling, she honored his request and went rummaging through her kitchen for tea supplies. My father watched her with a soft smile. "You seem different here at home." "Different? How?" "You're more like a housewife than the fierce warrior I once knew, peaceful and unguarded." At those words, Carmen stiffened for a moment, realizing she was alone with a man who could crush her easily if he wanted to. "Do I need to keep my guard up against you, Abraham?" Laughing, he pointed to the tea.
No.
"I'm just an old man who drinks tea." At that, Carmen laughed too. "Smooth talker, huh? Abraham Starlight, you're going to cause a lot of trouble for the ladies outside." As the atmosphere between my father and Carmen grew more heated, I stood there, gripping my head. Was my father really this good at talking to women? When? How? Did my mother even know what was going on here? I didn't want to watch anymore. Felt so wrong. "Please stop. I don't want to see this." Thankfully, my father managed to control himself till the very end and avoided a catastrophe. I exhaled in relief as the memory continued. For a moment there, I almost thought Carmen might have been my mother. In any case, surprisingly, the Starlight family didn't hold any grudges against my father. Isan Starlight was a sharp man, and he realized Abraham could become an incredible asset. After all, they both bore the Starlight blood. Even if one came from a branch family. Isan was terminally ill at that time. His sons were unfit to inherit the title of Lord, and that left only one contender. His ambitious younger brother, Leonidas Starlight. Leonidas had lost to Isan in the past, but now he sought the position once again after learning about his brother's illness. But Isan had other ideas. The future of the Starlight family wasn't in his sons. Nor was it in his selfish brother, whose only loyalty was to power. He saw it instead in that miraculous young man who had appeared from nowhere. Isan didn't care about origins or background. The fact that Abraham had Starlight blood was enough. However, my father didn't seem particularly interested in the family from the start. Isan Starlight was a smart man. He helped me countless times without asking for anything in return. I truly respected him. My father knew the old man wanted something from him, but he didn't resent it. Without even realizing it, he learned much from Isan and benefited greatly from him. Abraham Starlight slowly but surely became the Starlight family's deadliest hidden weapon, without even knowing it. At that time, as his fame continued to spread, my father tried desperately to send us a signal to his family every time he appeared publicly. Whether during speeches in front of large crowds or in broadcasts meant to be seen by all, he always tried to reach out to us, using words and phrases only we would recognize, or gestures only we could understand. Small things, but enough to make my heart ache for the days we lived together. Yet it was all in vain. 4 years. No matter how hard he tried, he received no response. His repeated failures made him doubt whether we were even in the same world to begin with. I often wondered if I was the only one who reincarnated, the only one granted a second chance at life. He had no proof of our existence. The only evidence he clung to was the story he once heard from me, and the engineer's words, who had told him his son was on the way. At the time, I convinced myself, maybe I'd see you all someday. Maybe it just wasn't time yet. Maybe, if he grew stronger, if he completed all the system's missions to the end, maybe then he would finally meet us again. Years passed, one after another, and during that time so much happened. Abraham, fight me! The young lord of the Moonlight family, Drogo Moonlight, Sarah's father, would often come to challenge him. Back then, both my father and Drogo were SS plus ranks. It was a golden age with 3 SS plus level individuals in the Empire if you included Emperor Mikar Valerian. I saw Drogo lose to my father again and again. He challenged him 10 times. And lost 10 times. My father's fame only grew and grew. And little by little, Abraham Starlight became part of that world, without even realizing it. Especially after living 30 full years there. 30 years spent searching for his family, and yet he never found us. One day, I felt so hopeless. I wondered if maybe you were on the other side of the world. He hadn't found us within the Empire. So he started to believe that maybe, just maybe, we were in the Ultras continent. It was a reckless idea without a shred of proof. But it was possible. So I set off for that place. The legends of Abraham Starlight were countless. And this was one of them. The day he invaded the Ultras continent. Alone. Chapter 229. Memories of the Fallen Star, 6. He crossed the demonic sea by himself, killing countless nightmare creatures that lurked within those waters. And in the end, he made it to the other side. The moment he breached their shores, he found them waiting. The 4 lords of the Ultras. Gavid Lindman, Madam, and a tall, filthy man wearing a black mask that hid his disfigured face. The former Lord Val, along with another figure clad in a plague doctor's robes and crow mask. The former Lord, ever black. For SS-level lords gathered to meet him. I see. So you were waiting for me. Unleashing the full pressure of his 9-star starlight aura, Abraham walked toward them with a face full of impatience. The Dark Sister gleamed coldly in his grip, and without warning he attacked. That day, an earth-shattering battle broke out. Abraham Starlight versus the 4 lords of the Ultras. I fought with the intent to kill, but they were too damn stubborn. Each of them wielded monstrous demonic contracts that turned their bodies into weapons beyond human limits. And worse still, they unleashed horrors against him. Creatures shaped like humans but utterly distorted, with black blood oozing from their eyes and mouths. They used them as cannon fodder. Every time I cut them down, all I felt was disgust. I remembered what you told me about the Ultras, about how their society worshipped blood. The Ultras continent was like another world entirely, a world the Empire knew nothing about. In that land, blood itself was sacred. Those born with tainted blood had no future. Their bodies doomed to rot away, infected by the very demonic power that ran through their veins, until they mutated into abominations. I clenched my fists as I watched it. This horror was ultimately my crime too. As the author, the creator of this world, I bore some responsibility for what was happening there. Those monsters that attacked my father were once humans. Humans who had been forcibly infused with demonic blood. Sometimes the process would succeed, creating what they called the high-blooded. But those cases were exceedingly rare. More often, the demonic blood acted as a deadly poison, killing us humans, twisting us into grotesque abominations, into the creatures that assaulted my father without end. Sometimes mutations would occur, turning the corrupted humans into even more horrifying monsters. The stronger the demonic blood infused into them, the more powerful the resulting creature. These monsters had roamed the earth for over 300 years, I closed my eyes against the bloody battle unfolding between my father, the lords of the Ultras, and those hideous beings. Those monsters, they were what we now call the nightmare creatures. The very creatures humanity hunted across the Empire, the same ones I had faced countless times myself. They weren't monsters. They were people. Humans hunting humans. All this time, a truth that should never be known. My father, Abraham Starlight, he knew it. After a grueling battle against the Lords, the strongest human demon finally intervened. Dragoth. He wielded one of the most powerful legendary swords in existence. The Moonlight Sword. The aura released by that sword devoured all other forms of aura. And even my father struggled against the onslaught as Dragoth and the four lords surrounded him. In the end, my father was forced to retreat, barely escaping with his life, thanks to the intervention of Mikar Valerian. That battle only escalated the animosity between the Empire and the Ultras even further. After that infamous incident, my father continued to live. He continued to grow stronger. In gratitude for the help he received, Emperor Mikar invited my father to a grand banquet within his imperial palace. Mikar Valerian was a man of profound vision. He saw further than anyone else. His insight was genuinely admirable, alongside his overwhelming talent. Though he was older than me, he too had reached SS Plus rank. And that alone was astonishing. My father respected the Emperor, and the Emperor in turn was intrigued by him. That day, Mikar invited me to a one-on-one duel, a friendly match to strengthen our bond. True warriors spoke with swords, not at dining tables. It was an unspoken rule, and so the duel was arranged in secret. Only a handful of the highest-ranking officials even knew about it. The battle lasted a long time. Fought deep within the eastern nightmare lands between the Empire's greatest spearman, Mikar Valerian, and the miracle swordsman, Abraham Starlight. And after a brutal, hard-fought duel, for the first time, Mikar's back touched the ground. He lost. From that moment it became clear, this man from the minor Starlight branch was the real deal. Many believed he would be the next great hero after Casus Valerian. But the Church denied such claims. For the sacred sword Vermithor had not chosen him as its master. Yet my father never needed that sword in the first place. The Dark Sister alone was more than enough. His name was now on every tongue across the continent. He had finally reached the height he sought, but not the goal he truly desired. He refused to give in to despair. He had always seen this life as a gift. I made sure to live every day to its fullest, out of respect for the blessings given to me. Yet despite everything, he could never forget his family. Even after 30 long years, he never gave up. He endured the hollow emptiness their absence left behind. And then came the meeting that changed Abraham Starlight's life forever. The former Lord, Isan Starlight, had finally reached his limits, at last surrendering to the illness that had slowly consumed him. An illness that had no cure. Isan Starlight had fought it bravely for a long, long time. He had lived an astonishingly long life. But in the end he could endure no more. In his final days he pleaded. He begged Abraham Starlight to become the next lord of the Starlight family. I didn't even know how to refuse. Not to the man who treated me like a son all those years. My father, lost and adrift, found himself unable to accomplish so many of the things he had once set out to do. He couldn't find his family. He couldn't break past the SS Plus rank. And no matter how much he searched, he couldn't locate that mysterious engineer. Abraham Starlight had reached a dead end. He stood at a crossroads where he slowly began to surrender to this new life and become a true part of this world. I accepted. He accepted the offer to become the new lord of the Starlight family. But there was a problem. Abraham Starlight did not possess the pure bloodline of the main family, and despite his overwhelming strength and achievements, many opposed his ascension. That was when Lord Isan Starlight made a proposal. One that changed everything. He asked me to marry her, his only daughter. Lord Asan had many sons, but only one daughter, a fragile girl who had inherited his incurable illness, leaving her so secluded that Abraham had never seen her before. At first, my father refused. He couldn't forget his family, no matter how many years had passed. But under the relentless pressure of a dying man, he eventually agreed to meet her, if only once, to judge for himself. And so it led to that day. Inside an isolated garden belonging to one of the Starlight family's main estates, my father met her for the first time. She sat quietly in a wheelchair. Her legs had been paralyzed since birth. Her body seemed frail, and yet it radiated a quiet, undeniable elegance. When I saw her face, I froze. Just one look was enough. I knew instantly who she was. She was the mother of Fry Starlight, the mother of this body I now inhabited. Her face, she looked like a more mature version of my sister Ada. As if I were standing before her twin. That woman was like a blooming rose, a rose whose roots wrapped tightly around my heart, stirring emotions that had long since died within me. I listened to my father's words, expressionless. Even after all those years, she succeeded where everyone else had failed. It was almost absurd. How one woman managed to fill the void that had hollowed out a man like my father for over 30 years. I didn't understand the feelings he spoke of. Those emotions he described. I had none of them, but I had no right to judge him. I who broke after just 2 years, who tried to end it all the moment despair crushed me. How could I ever blame a man who endured for 30 years? How could I fault him for falling in love, for finding some sliver of salvation? That woman became my mother in this world. Her name was Anna Starlight. Chapter 230. The Story of Abraham Starlight 1. Fry Starlight's POV. Anna Starlight, the mother of Fry Starlight. I didn't even know what I was supposed to feel when I looked at her. I watched how she met my father for the first time, how their relationship slowly built up, step by step. At first, I only saw her as a poor girl whom life had left unable to even walk. Anna Starlight had been afflicted with aura decay disease, a condition she inherited from her father. She could no longer gather enough strength in her legs to walk properly. She could barely take a few steps, and even then only with the help of others. On top of that, being the daughter of the lord of the family who kept her shielded from the outside world, her entire world began and ended within the confines of that mansion. And yet, even in her condition, I saw that her smile never once left her face. I guess what I first felt toward her was curiosity. How could she still smile so brightly despite everything? Abraham Starlight was a man who had traveled across the entire world, while Anna Starlight was a girl who had barely seen beyond her garden. When I first tried to introduce myself to her, she told me there was no need, because she already knew everything about me. Her father had protected her so much that he made sure to share every little detail about his life with her. And among those tales, there were many about Abraham Starlight. Anna Starlight had become curious too. After hearing all those grand stories, she wanted to see for herself what kind of man Abraham Starlight really was. And just like that, from simple casual conversations to a friendly relationship, to something much deeper. Time passed and Lord Isan Starlight passed away, leaving behind a will that named Abraham Starlight as his successor. I saw my father visiting that secluded garden more and more often. Outside, he bore the title of Lord and wielded his sword proudly. But inside that garden, he was just a man who sat beside a woman. Many had opposed him, chief among them Leonidas Starlight, who wanted to claim the position of Lord for himself. But my father crushed that opposition easily when he fought Leonidas, and broke him, bit by bit. My father spent more and more time with her, pushing her wheelchair around the garden. "Tell me, Abraham, why do you look so empty?" Anna asked him that question many times, but he never knew how to answer. "I don't know." He had spent 30 long years chasing a goal from his previous life. And in this life, he had nothing. He was utterly empty. Anna Starlight managed to understand me without me needing to utter a single word. She was so perceptive. She read me like an open book. I watched, little by little, as my father fell for her. One day, Anna told him about her dream, to see the world, and he made that dream come true. Without any warning, he lifted her up in his arms and took her out to see the world beyond those walls. He soared high into the sky carrying her, while she clung tightly to him. From that day on, he took her out every day. Together, they traveled across the entire empire. The pair caught many eyes. This strange couple, a mighty man and a frail woman who couldn't even walk properly. But who would dare touch her? The man beside her was the strongest in the world. Bit by bit, I saw life return to my father's face. I saw how he laughed. I saw how he smiled. Those expressions were the exact mirror of my oldest memories. The face he used to make when we all sat together as a family. My siblings, my mother, and I should have been happy, seeing him finally find a piece of salvation. My father married her. I heard all their conversations, how they fell in love with each other. I even heard her happily talking about how she wanted to have 2 children, a boy and a girl. I listened, and I watched it all. I was supposed to feel happy. My father had finally found peace after 30 long years of endless suffering and chasing an unattainable dream, a mirage he had pursued for far too long. I was supposed to be happy for him, but I couldn't be. Standing there, witnessing everything, I just couldn't. I couldn't force myself to feel it. Yes, I knew better than anyone what he had gone through, the price he had paid, the battles he had fought for us. But even so, all I felt was suffocation, a strange emotion that made my chest tighten without warning. Such strange feelings, such incomprehensible emotions. No matter how I looked at them, all I could see was a happy family being slowly built from scratch. But Father, I know I have no right to say this, and yet what I felt at that moment was betrayal. A year passed since my father married Anna Starlight, and soon they had their first child, a beautiful girl who resembled her mother. That girl was Ada. My sister grew up showered in love and affection from her mother. As for my father, I often saw him avoiding her altogether. To be honest, I thought I could finally forget the past and its pain after meeting Anna. I heard my father's words of a man who just wanted to escape reality, if only for a little while. But I couldn't. Every time I looked at her, all I could see was all of you, how I held you all in my arms on the day you were born, how I watched you grow, day after day. Ada Starlight constantly reminded him of the children he had lost, of me and my siblings. She was like a living embodiment of the memories he had buried deep within. The emotions he had once pushed aside began to surge violently within him again. How could he ever run away from a world built from the very story his own son once told him? From the beginning, he was forced to live with his reality. His indifference toward Ada planted seeds of negativity within her heart, seeds that grew rapidly. She thought her father hated her. Maybe she wasn't good enough? Maybe she had to work harder to earn his approval? And so she did. She worked tirelessly to gain even a shred of his recognition. While other children her age played games and laughed without a care in the world, Ada Starlight was learning, growing, trying desperately to become strong enough to make him proud. I saw how hard she tried. My father saw it too. But even when he tried to get closer to her, he would pull away without realizing it. Anna Starlight saw his struggles, but she couldn't do anything, not when he never spoke the full truth to her. Slowly but surely, Abraham Starlight was on the verge of losing not just his first family, but his second one too. Abraham Starlight, he began to hate himself. He blamed himself for everything. All that negative energy, all that burning self-loathing, he poured into relentless training and endless battles. Training, fighting, that was all he thought about. He killed countless monsters and countless humans. At that time, the Ultras lived in constant terror of him. His sword reaped so many of them that the Dark Sister earned its infamous new title, the Demon Slayer, Another name added to Abraham Starlight's endless list of titles. His only salvation had been his wife, Anna Starlight. But even she was no longer enough. And so, he continued to push himself, to fight madly, especially as the war against the Ultras loomed closer. And then, one day, when he was burning with regret and self-hatred, my father finally shattered the limits of humanity. He broke through. I watched in awe as Abraham Starlight surpassed the SS Plus rank, announcing himself as a being who had transcended the very concept of humanity itself. He attained the 10th star of the Stardust style. At that point, my father possessed enough strength to change the world, just like the first hero Kazes Valerian. But ironically, at the very same time, another event occurred. Anna Starlight was pregnant again. That night, Anna Starlight told him. She was carrying his child. At first, he didn't know how to react. Another child, another chance. But before he could truly grasp the joy of it, another blow came. One of the Starlight family doctors, who had been monitoring Anna's condition closely, sought him out in private and delivered the cruelest news. That child must not be born, the doctor said. Anna Starlight had already pushed her fragile body to its limits by giving birth to Ada. Carrying another child would be too much. She would bleed internally and die. Anna must abort the child. The doctor insisted. My father, he didn't know what the right choice was. But he knew one thing. He didn't want to lose his wife. And so, shattered but desperate, he agreed to the abortion, to kill the child before it could be born. But Anna Starlight, she refused. She refused with a strength that belied her fragile body, saying she would never kill her own child, that she would rather die than do so. Abraham didn't know what to do anymore. But fate had even more cruelty in store for him that night. That same night. The night Abraham Starlight would never forget. In the dark study he used as his sanctuary, a guest arrived, a figure cloaked in black with glowing blue eyes. After all these years, after all that time, they met again. That encounter was the final blow. Chapter 231. The Story of Abraham Starlight, 2. Father was about to attack him. A man who had now reached SSS rank. But he froze completely when the engineer spoke words sharper than any sword on this world. The child Anna Starlight carries is your child, one of the family you have searched for so desperately, for so long. That child is. Hearing those words, I watched my father collapse to the ground, broken. His face twisted in an expression I could not even begin to understand. The child they wanted him to kill was his son, his long-lost family. Those words destroyed me more than anything else ever could. He was happy. So happy because he had found one of us. He had found his family right there so close all along. But now, he was thrust into an unbearable choice. Choose Abraham Starlight. Let the child live. And the mother would die. Save your old family. And kill your new one. Or let the child die. And save the mother. Save your new family. And kill the old. Your answer will decide their fates. The engineer was truly cruel. A master manipulator. No, he had been manipulating us all along. From the very beginning. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms, feeling a fraction of the agony my father must have endured. Forced to choose between his family. My father, the strongest man alive, a man who could destroy the very planet if he wished. Yet his sword could not save him now. Someone had to die. It broke me completely, to the point I felt myself being torn into pieces. Father sobbed, broken beyond repair. Can't you just take me instead? He begged. Sacrifice me. Let them both live instead. But fate showed no mercy. And this was the cruel reality. The guilt my father bore that day. I cannot even begin to imagine it. No strength could carry him through it. That day, I decided to tell her everything. I was stunned by his decision. He went to Anna Starlight, and he told her everything. Everything from the very beginning. Every truth. Every burden. He laid it all bare before her. He told her everything. His old family, the system, the engineer, the reincarnation. How he was a man from the past. How he had been forced into an impossible choice between her and his own son. He expected her to call him a liar. He expected her to curse him, to hate him, to tear him down with her words. In his eyes, he deserved it. But Anna Starlight, she did none of that. Instead, she responded with a single word. I understand. She believed him. Smiling softly, she placed her hand over her womb, over the fragile life growing inside her. There's no need to hesitate. The answer is clear. Even until the end, Abraham Starlight could not understand how she managed to smile through it all. The child, our child, must live. She had been ready to sacrifice herself from the very start. Maybe you see him as someone else. But even if he carries memories from another life, this child is our son. He is a piece of both of us. Anna. He will live, not as some reincarnated soul. He will live as Fry Starlight. My father was stunned. Fry. That will be his name. That child. Fry Starlight. Just like that. On that day, Abraham Starlight made his choice. He chose his son. Thus the days passed. Your birth coincided with the war between us and the Ultras, the War of Light, a brutal conflict that claimed countless lives. Back then, whenever I returned home from the battlefield, I would find him waiting for me, the engineer. That entity Abraham once could never find, now hovered near him every day. The engineer stayed close, always close. He's different from you, different from all of you. That's what the engineer told him. His son's reincarnation was different from Abraham's own. What do you mean? Abraham tried to ask, tried to understand, but the engineer refused to say more. He only said one thing: his son's arrival would be monumental, and that his son was unlike anything this world had ever seen. His words made me wonder, over and over again, just what are you, my son? How did you write the events of this world with such precision? It was a mystery, one that made no sense no matter how deeply he thought about it. Son, sometimes I wonder, what exactly are you? What kind of being would make an entity like the engineer treat his arrival with such gravity? As the war raged, the world itself began to change. The world was preparing for his coming. The closer the time drew near, the chattier the engineer became. Even that mechanical, cold being started to display something akin to emotion. He was completely mad, but I could only play along. For the sake of meeting you, my son, when the time came, he would finally have all the answers. The engineer lingered nearby, never straying far. As the due date approached, he even coordinated with Abraham to evacuate the entire Starlight estate. And instead, he filled it with strange things. I still remember the day he brought those strange creatures into the palace. Statues. Some massive, others disguised as members of the Starlight family. What caught my attention most were 3 statues standing at the front. One wore a laughing face, another wore a face of sorrow, and the last, a face of pure rage. All of them unleashed a terrifying pressure, especially the one with the angry mask. He was something far beyond even Mikar Valerian himself. These beings had come and surrounded Anna Starlight's manor, trembling in anticipation of the moment they had awaited for so long. At that time, I couldn't help but wonder if the child about to be born was truly my son. The world had been turned upside down so much that Abraham Starlight could no longer make sense of anything. Time kept moving forward, and the closer the moment approached, the more insane the engineer became, to the point where he would often mutter incoherently while waiting. A madness reflected even by the ancient statues he had brought with him. What exactly was happening? Days and months passed, until finally, the long-awaited day arrived. On that day, the entire world trembled. Even the flow of aura itself shifted. The aura became denser, stronger, as if the world itself was preparing. On that day, Fry Starlight was born. His birth changed everything. Chapter 232. The Story of Abraham Starlight 3. Inside a dim room, illuminated only by a few faint lights, Fry Starlight was born, a small, frail child, crying between Anna Starlight's arms. Abraham stared at him for a long time, watching both Fry and Anna cry together. Anna had bled severely, so much that her blood stained everything around them. Hugging her tightly, with Fry cradled between them, Anna Starlight whispered joyfully, "Abraham, treasure him, protect him. Please, he's not just your son." Tears filled her eyes as her face slowly darkened. "He's our son. He's our precious Fry. Remember that, always." Anna cried while gesturing for the little girl standing nearby to come closer. Ada Starlight had also been present. She had every right to witness her mother's final moments. Ada wept bitterly in her mother's embrace. Anna told her that she loved her more than anything in this life, and that she loved the little child in her arms just as much. "Ada, don't hate your brother. Be his support, and he will be yours as well. Support each other, for that is the only way to survive in this cruel world." And finally, within her room, in her bed, surrounded by her loving family, Anna Starlight passed away. Only her final words lived on within the hearts of her family. Everything happened so quickly that it almost felt like a dream. For Abraham, who had been torn between the battlefield and his family over and over again, his body could endure it all, but his mind could not, especially after the death of his wife and everything that came with the birth of his son, along with those strange creatures that surrounded him and the engineer beside them, to the point where he even thought that what would be born from Anna Starlight wouldn't be human. But in the end, no matter how long he stared at the child, he was just human. Frail and small. He was his son. He was both his old family and his new one. And so Fry was born. After those events, Ada was sent to the Aklas Mountains to keep her safe, while Fry was left inside that isolated fortress, as the engineer insisted he must stay there. "I told you. He is different from you and from all other humans." That body already carried his soul, but it had not yet fully received it. On that day I understood, even if only a little, what the engineer had been speaking of. Just for a moment, but he saw it. The true soul of his son that dwelled within that body. Something he had never seen before. Something beyond anything he could have ever imagined. The engineer was at his peak, fully focused, completely drained, as he transferred everything into Frey's body. At that time, Abraham's fortress would not accept the presence of any other human soul. Only the statues and those strange creatures roamed the halls now. Abraham Starlight continued visiting his son whenever he could, even amidst the chaos of war. He knew the engineer wouldn't harm Fry. If anything, that entity seemed to care for him even more than Abraham himself. And so, Abraham fought on the front lines with a battered mind and spirit, clinging desperately to the dream of one day speaking with his son and learning the truth. Finally, as the war reached its zenith, Frey's body fully embraced everything it was meant to carry. Fry Starlight was truly born at last. That very day, the War of Light reached its conclusion when Abraham Starlight faced Dragoth in a final, earth-shattering duel. Dragoth, the monstrous entity wielding the fearsome moonlight sword, unleashed unimaginable devastation. But even with all his strength, he was nothing before Abraham Starlight, who had recently ascended to the SSS rank. Dragging what little remained of Dragoth's mutilated corpse, merely a severed head and part of a torso, Abraham proudly declared the Empire's final victory. He had emerged from that battle completely unscathed. It had been a massacre. The Ultras were utterly crushed. Yet as Abraham stood atop the battlefield, bathed in victory, a chilling unease gripped him. The system screen before his eyes began flashing wildly, and the engineer's frantic voice echoed inside his mind. "Return to the fortress immediately. To Fry. Fry is in danger. That was all Abraham needed to hear. Tearing through the heavens in a blinding streak of light, he raced back toward his son. That night, after Frey's full awakening, the engineer had departed briefly to the Shadow Sect to make some preparations. And in that brief absence, something happened. Something even the engineer had not foreseen. As Abraham soared through the skies, he crossed paths with the engineer, who looked even more terrified than Abraham himself. Flying side by side, Abraham shouted, "What's happening? What's wrong with Fry?" The engineer screamed back, his voice more urgent than ever. "Listen carefully, Abraham Starlight. Etch my words deep into your soul." Abraham, sensing the gravity of the moment, forced himself to listen. "Your son, Fry Starlight, is far more important than you realize. For countless ages, we prepared for his coming, hiding our efforts from the eyes that record everything from above. We succeeded in evading them all, except his. There was one being, one nightmare, who had noticed. Listen carefully. There is a monster among monsters, a being who stands above all creation, the Demon King, Agaroth. He is called the Devourer of all. His powers are endless, but above all his eyes, his cursed eyes, are his greatest weapon. With a single glance, Agaroth can perceive the fate, destiny, and hidden nature of any creature. He sees their past, their present, their future. Nothing escapes his gaze. From the moment Fry entered this world, Agaroth knew. Abraham's heart pounded in disbelief. "Are you telling me that we're about to face such a being?"
No.
The engineer roared, his voice thunderous. "If Agaroth himself came, we would be dead before we could even take 10 steps. To fight the Demon King was beyond foolishness. But what we are about to face is a catastrophe no less terrifying." When they finally reached the fortress where Fry was kept, Abraham's face turned grim. The battlefield before him was a scene of devastation. The once mighty statues, the ones bearing the angry, laughing, and weeping masks, lay shattered, broken into pieces, crushed, destroyed. The engineer manipulated the aura between his hands, conjuring a massive barrier that engulfed the fortress and a wide area around it, isolating them completely from the outside world. "Abraham, Agaroth isn't the only demon who wields terrifying power. There are others." "The 10 upper seats," the engineer continued urgently. "Each of the 10 upper seats shares one ability with the Demon King. And among them, one demon had inherited Agaroth's eye. A demon who could perceive destiny itself. A demon who could see it all. A demon who had seen Fry. That's our enemy. One of the vilest, filthiest monsters. A creature that delights in the suffering of all beings, even its own kind." Through the blood-stained halls, past the mangled corpses, they advanced, until finally, they pushed open the great door. Abraham's eyes widened at the horrific scene. The sound of Frey's cries filled the room, and at the center of it all stood that abomination. A dark figure, radiating a monstrous aura. Its hair flowed like a black, putrid liquid. Its body twisted unnaturally, with 4 jagged horns spiraling from its skull, like a mockery of an ancient king's crown. The creature turned to face them, blood staining its hands, one of which clutched Frey's tiny, wailing form. Dark aura pulsed violently around Frey's fragile body. The demon's face was deathly pale, 2 blood-red eyes glaring hatefully, and a third eye burning on its forehead, an eye taken directly from the Demon King. The creature sneered at them with a wicked grin. That was the 4th upper seat Weskier, Chapter 233. The Story of Abraham Starlight. 4. The engineer growled. Without hesitation, he shouted, "No matter what happens, no matter the cost, we cannot let him take Fry." Those words struck Abraham like war drums. Seeing his son trapped in the arms of such a monstrous being, a filthy, overwhelming entity unlike anything he had ever faced, ignited something primal inside him. With a deafening roar, Abraham unleashed a torrent of aura from the Dark Sister, sending a blast that obliterated the entire fortress. The explosion shook the heavens. Abraham lunged forward with savage determination, desperate to tear Fry free from the demon's grasp. Yet Weskier effortlessly blocked the attack with one hand, while holding Fry securely in the other. He. The demon laughed, a sickening, syrupy sound that made Abraham's very soul recoil. He realized then, this was no ordinary enemy. Weskier stretched out his hand toward Abraham, releasing a wave of corruptive power that threatened to swallow him whole. But a blast of blue aura deflected it at the last moment. The engineer appeared from the void, weaving countless seals into the air. In response, thousands of giant ethereal hands formed, launching a relentless assault against the fourth upper demon. The clash between the engineer and Weskier shook the skies. For a moment, Abraham froze, stunned by the sheer magnitude of their confrontation. But the engineer's voice snapped him back to reality. Attack! Together we can win! Weskier had forcefully broken through the ancient seal of Casus Valerian to enter this world, but doing so had cost him dearly. He wasn't at full strength. Hearing this, Abraham surged forward, pouring every ounce of his might into the fight. The 10 stars of stardust blazed fiercely around his heart, feeding the Dark Sister with a blinding flood of light-based aura. Weskier found himself pinned between arcs of searing white light and the relentless assault of the engineer's spectral hands. On the engineer's left hand, a power resembling a clock spun rapidly, a technique that halted Weskier's counterattacks before they could even begin. Thus, 3 forces collided in the night sky, 2 brilliant beams. One blue, one white clashing against a tide of absolute black. Weskier continued to defend with only one arm, while still gripping Fry protectively. The battle raged on, splitting the heavens and scattering the clouds, revealing the endless tapestry of stars. After an earth-shaking collision, Abraham and the engineer were hurled back toward the ground. And floating alone in the sky was Weskier, still clutching Fry. The demon's crimson eyes barely spared a glance at Abraham. Instead, they locked solely onto the engineer. Slowly, Weskier opened his mouth and spoke. "You, I know you." Weskier's voice rang out, laced with a malice that made the engineer's expression darken. "You've grown weak, far weaker than you once were. But I never forget filth like you. Aren't you one of Nameless' followers?" The moment that name was uttered, the blue-eyed figure's face went cold. "Don't you dare speak that name with your filthy tongue, demon." "Ha! Look at you," Weskier sneered. "Playing your little games on this pitiful planet." His gaze shifted to Fry, still trembling in his arm. "I've seen it. This one's fate. Are you telling me this is the one who created this world? The one who wrote everything?" He laughed, low, mocking, maddening. "This eye the king gave me does not lie. What it sees is absolute. But seriously, what do you take me for?" With every word from the demon, the engineer's expression hardened further. "Am I supposed to believe that this pitiful thing created me? I, who lived for millions of years before he ever wrote a single word of his nonsense. Don't make me laugh." Weskier had seen everything through that accursed eye, everything about Fry, but he still refused to accept it. He raised a hand, tapping his third eye. "I don't know how you managed to deceive the king's sight, to trick him into believing your farce. But you won't deceive me. Not these eyes. Here and now, this ends, Nameless pawn. What a shame. After all you've done. After all this time." In response, the engineer clenched his fists, his aura igniting around him in violent arcs. For the first time in an eternity, his thoughts were clouded. Why? Why him? Why out of all the possible entities beyond the veil? Did it have to be Weskier? Out of everyone, why did he come? But the demon's words only strengthened his resolve. No matter what, Weskier had to be stopped. "You will not leave this place alive." The engineer lunged forward. "Then come. Show me what you've got," Weskier roared. The two forces collided. A cataclysmic blast shook the world, and Abraham joined the fight. But even together they struggled. Their enemy fought with just one hand, and he wasn't even at full strength, having forced his way through the sealed gates. The gap in power was monstrous. From afar, both Abraham and the engineer hurled themselves at the demon again and again, only to be slammed into the ground each time by his overwhelming force. They kept rising, kept attacking, their speed blurred into flashes of light, their bodies trailing afterimages behind them. The engineer knew. If Weskier escaped with Fry, it would all be over. They had to stop him, no matter the cost. But the fourth upper demon was relentless. Even with all three of them at the SSS rank, they were barely a match. Without warning, Weskier tore off the engineer's time-wielding arm, then smashed his face into the earth. "I told you, you've grown soft." Then came the next wave of corrupted aura. One that shattered Abraham's body, sending him crashing down in agony. This pitiful creature you dragged along changes nothing. But Abraham Starlight stood again, trying to strike, only to find himself bleeding uncontrollably, black aura tearing through his body from within. Though only moments had passed, they had exchanged thousands of blows, and every clash left Abraham more broken. Weskier, on the other hand, hardly had a scratch. His vitality was monstrous, limitless, and worse, he still carried Fry in his other arm, making it nearly impossible to fight back properly. Abraham Starlight stared with bloodshot eyes at his son, cradled in the arms of a devil. At this rate, he was going to lose them again. He was going to lose his family, the engineer who had somehow lost the power he once wielded, and Abraham, who, despite all the strength he had acquired throughout his life, now found himself helpless. In that moment, they both made a final decision. Abraham didn't want to lose his family again. If someone had to die this time, it would be him and no one else. He ignited the 10 stars spinning around his heart, burning his life force, consuming his core and aura until there was nothing left. Abraham sacrificed everything in exchange for power, power to save him, power to protect his family. His body blazed with radiant fury as he raised his sword high. Dark Sister trembled in his hands. Weskier instantly turned toward the insignificant human now radiating terrifying power. Abraham poured everything he had into that one final strike. "You won't take him, my son, my family, his only son. You won't take him, not again." The aura of the stars screamed with every word from Abraham's mouth. "Not while I still breathe." Weskier quickly summoned his dark aura, forming a barrier around himself, while Abraham unleashed a devastating slash that shook the earth and split the sky in two. His sword lit the night sky as it cleaved through everything. The fourth upper demon was stunned to find his barrier shattered, his seemingly invincible body torn open. Abraham's strike severed Weskier from the right shoulder, slicing off his entire arm, a chunk of his chest, and part of his face. The same arm that had held Fry fell. With it, the small child dropped, only for Abraham to catch him in his arms and hold him close. And in that moment, the engineer reappeared beneath them, forming a strange seal that condensed a terrifying amount of energy. He shouted at Abraham, "Go!" Without hesitation, Abraham flew away, fleeing the ruined battlefield with his son in his arms. Behind him, the engineer roared, "Weskier, you won't go any further." His body glowed with burning blue lines. His last reserve. "By the power granted to me by my master, you will not." Aura erupted from his one remaining arm, unleashing a blinding blue column of destruction that shot into the sky. Weskier screamed from within the blast, "Don't think this will kill me, nameless pawn." As his body burned inside the beam, the demon rose, howling, "I've seen everything. I already know it all. You won't escape me this time. Remember that." And with that, Weskier vanished, leaving only those cursed words behind. The engineer collapsed to the ground, trembling, barely able to withstand the aftermath of the disaster. Elsewhere, Abraham Starlight had flown far, with Fry in his arms. His body was broken, his spirit shaken. He found himself returning to the battlefield where he had once defeated Dragoth. There, his body began to fall apart. The 10 stars he had ignited were now consuming him, eating away at his flesh. He crashed to the ground, still holding his son tight. He raised his right hand and watched as it turned to dust, the stardust. He knew immediately. This was the end. Cradling the crying Fry to his chest, he whispered in pain, but smiled. "I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. I'm sorry I didn't try hard enough. I'm sorry I wasn't enough." He held Fry close as his body turned into stardust. "I'm sorry I was a terrible father." The engineer appeared before him. Silent. His glowing blue eyes watched, but he said nothing. He simply witnessed Abraham's final moments. "I love you, my son, more than anything." With the last of his strength, Abraham infused Frey's body with his remaining power and whispered in his ear, "Remember this always, my son. I will always be with you." And when he reached his limit, he handed Fry over to the engineer and died with a smile on his face. "Take care of him." The engineer said nothing. He simply nodded, clutching Fry close. Abraham Starlight gave everything, sacrificed it all, for his son. In that moment, the engineer vanished. Abraham's allies gathered around him, and the man who had once shaken the world died, screaming only one name: Fry Starlight. And Fry, he saw everything. He saw his father's final battle. He witnessed his story, the story of Abraham Starlight. Chapter 234. A New Beginning 1. Fry Starlight's POV. Abraham Starlight is dead. My father is dead. He died protecting me, right until the very end. I stood there, frozen, unable to say a word. My mind simply couldn't process what I had just witnessed. So I did nothing. I just watched as my father's body turned into stardust, while his final words echoed in my ears. "I'm sorry, my son. Even in my final moments, I wasn't the kind of father you could be proud of. Maybe you even hated me. But I truly, truly love you, my son." When I ignited the 10 stars of the Stardust technique, sacrificing my life, I reached a level of strength that allowed me to perform feats beyond what any ordinary human could ever achieve. In his final moments, he entrusted me with all the power he had gathered, along with a fragment of his will, sealing it into my small body, or rather, into my body. Using the last bit of experience I earned through the system, I recorded this message for you. I've lived in this world far longer than you have. So even if you're the one who wrote all of this, I know you'll suffer in this cruel world. He left me with many things. My father had a feeling something might one day threaten his life. So before his death, he made arrangements, preparing for me to inherit the title of Starlight Lord, and ensuring I would have many advantages. I left all the aura I had gathered inside of you. You might think of it as borrowed power, but make no mistake. I only filled a fraction of your potential. The sea of aura you possess is far greater than anything I've ever held. Aura at the SSS rank. That was his gift to me. And within that aura, he embedded his will. A will to protect his son, to support and encourage me every time I was about to fall. All this time, I had felt it. Something was always pushing me forward, keeping me from collapsing. When I almost died inside the Shadow Sect, it was his strength that kept me conscious. When Heisenberg tried to kill me that day on the train, it was my father's will that shielded me. When I faced Baylor, during the island trial, and even in my final battle against Snow Lionheart, my father was there. He was always there, watching over me, every step of the way. The vision began to fade, and I was pulled back into reality. I was still kneeling in my room, the very room where it had all begun. And there, I saw him, my father, standing before me in the form of radiant white light, slowly dissolving into the air. I took a deep breath, trying to muster the best smile I could give him. "Dad, you know, I did my best. When I realized I'd never see you all again, it hurt. It hurt so much I wished I were dead. I wished for death, just so I wouldn't have to live in a world without you. Fry Starlight, dual soul. That's why, when I believed there was even the slightest chance of hope through winning the Victoriad, I fought. I fought and fought. I picked up my sword, trained every day, threw myself into battles of life and death, until my body broke time and time again. I shed blood, sweat, and tears, just to survive while everyone else kept trying to kill me. And still, I kept fighting. Fry Starlight, dual so. I gasped, overwhelmed, as all those feelings I had been suppressing finally erupted. It hurt. It hurt more than anything. Pain I had never known. Not in my peaceful past life. But I endured. I endured and fought against the whole world, just for the chance to come back. And in that moment, I couldn't hold back the tears any longer. It was hard. Every time I tried to move forward, another wall stood in my way. It really hurt. It hurt. Gasp. I choked, unable to speak clearly. 2 years of bottled-up emotions, feelings I had never shared with anyone, came crashing out all at once. It hurt so bad. I wished I was dead. I wished for death more than once. And yet, I kept going. I kept going. For you. For all of you. When I reached a point where ordinary humans would have long since broken, I pushed past it. I wanted my father to know. I wanted him to hear it. At that moment, that glowing specter of my father smiled. I know. Fry Starlight, dualess, that spirit, or what was left of my father's will, was beginning to fade. And so, before it vanished completely, I forced myself to speak the words I had always wanted to say, fighting past the burning tightness in my chest that made it so hard to breathe. I suffered through hell for all of you, Father, so please don't say that I might hate you. You were my world. You all were the reason I kept going. I tried to keep myself composed as I forced those words out. Even in my previous life, I had never once said them properly to my father. That's why, Dad, I wanted you to know, I really, truly love you. You and the rest of our family. I love you all so much that I can't imagine a world without you. I just wanted to say it once. That I loved him. To be honest, even now, the thought of living in a world where they don't exist is something my mind simply can't accept. I still want to die. Right here, right now. But I love you too, son. I'm grateful I was blessed with a son like you. I'm proud of you, and I'm sure the rest of them feel the same. At that moment, I saw hazy images forming behind my father. The same figures that had visited me in my dreams so many times. Son. Just as we were given another chance at life, the rest of our family must have been too. So live, Fry. Live and make the most of your second chance. That's all we ever wanted for you. Live, my son. Live. I listened to his final words in silence, unable to say a thing as tears drowned my voice. All I could do was nod frantically as I choked on my emotions. Thank you, my son, and be careful of what lies within you. Use your power wisely, because what's inside you is nothing but darkness. A darkness I could never understand, no matter how hard I tried. When Abraham Starlight tried to pass on his strength, what he found inside was an endless abyss, an unfathomable darkness without bottom or light. But when I gazed deep into it, that darkness stared back. I saw something sitting at its depths, something he couldn't comprehend. Something that sent shivers down his spine. Something that not even the fourth high demon had managed to do. So keep moving forward, son. But do so carefully. Little by little, you'll uncover the truth. You'll discover the truth of that darkness within. The message ended. The final specters of my family vanished from before my eyes. And with them, the words faded from my system interface. The dual soul was finally gone. And what remained? Fry Starlight. I couldn't accept it. I couldn't accept that they were really gone. So I ran toward them. Toward him. Reaching out with my right hand, trying to hold on to that fading light. But my hand didn't catch them. It grabbed something else entirely. I felt the coarse, solid texture of the object that had emerged from within that radiant glow. Something dark. My eyes widened as the shape fully revealed itself. The engraved hilt, the pitch-black blade, a black katana that unleashed a wave of power, surging through my body in an instant. The Dark Sister. My father's final gift to me. I collapsed to the ground, sitting there, gazing at that sword for a long, long time. This was the last thing he had touched before his death. The sword that had been with him for so many years. I sat in silence, thinking about the true meaning of my life up to this point. My chest was still burning. My eyes were red and sore from crying. I had probably cried more today than I had in my entire life combined. Even now, I still wanted to die. I still refused to live in this cruel, unforgiving world. But my father, he lived here for so long. He endured so much more than I ever did. He spent his life fighting for me, and in the end, he gave that life to save mine. My father, who sacrificed everything for me. By what right? By what right could I throw away the life he protected with everything he had? From the very beginning, this life was never mine to throw away. I don't know if I deserve to live. I don't know if I can keep going in a world without purpose anymore. That hollow space in my heart. It's still just as empty as it was the day I got here. But at the very least, out of respect for my father's sacrifice and the tragedy he endured for my sake, at the very least, I won't die in vain. To kill myself now would be an insult to everything that man went through. Abraham Starlight. So then, let's start over. I slid the sharp edge of the Dark Sister across my head, cutting off the long strands of white hair. They fell to the floor as I walked over to the bathroom mirror, the same one where I'd seen my reflection for the first time. And there it was again, my face, staring back at me. A lot had changed. That pale skin, the dark rings beneath my eyes, the darkness in my gaze, and my white hair. So much had changed. But now, with my hair cut short again, in a way I looked like I did back then. Back when I first ran into this bathroom, terrified. Back when my entire world collapsed before my eyes. Today, I would walk through the ruins of that broken world, searching for a reason to live. I will live. Chapter 235. A New Beginning, 2. Fry Starlight POV. That day, I walked through the corridors of the old Fry Starlight estate. The servants bowed, one after another, as I passed them. I spent a long time reviewing the new system, its changes, its updates, and the additions I had been granted. There was so much to process, but perhaps the most jarring of it all was the truth, that I had been reincarnated into this body from the very beginning. Not just 2 years ago. It was a shocking revelation, one I struggled to fully comprehend. I kept wondering what I truly meant to the engineer, and those strange creatures around him, and those who called themselves the Nameless Order, a group without a name, about whom I knew absolutely nothing. For now, I chose to focus on uncovering the truth and surviving this world drowned in chaos and destruction, to find a new purpose, a new reason to exist. But before that, there was one thing I had to do. There was still a part of my father's message. One he hadn't left for me. It was for someone else. Ada. I had already listened to that part before. My father had distanced himself from Ada because she reminded him of the family he lost, while she, on the other hand, believed he hated her, because of everything he had taken from her, everything he had left for me. My father had felt guilt toward her. Until the very end. That's why he left part of his final message for her. For both of us to hear. It didn't take long before I found myself standing before Ada's room, the one she had used in the estate. I knocked, and she told me to go away. Maybe she thought I was a servant, or someone else entirely. So I opened the door and walked in anyway. As I stepped inside, I found my sister seated at her desk. She looked more exhausted than usual. Fry. She sounded worried, especially after my recent breakdown and what might have looked like a death wish. So I tried to stay calm as much as I could. Hey, Ada. I saw her eyes widen slightly as she got a good look at me. What happened? Are you feeling better now? Ah, you cut your hair. She examined me quickly, her hands flitting about in concern. She really did look just like her mother. I'm fine. I just wanted to apologize for all the trouble I've caused so far. I'm sorry for being the worst brother ever. Honestly, she had gone through a lot because of me recently. No, it's okay. You don't have to apologize. I wasn't exactly the best sister either. I couldn't do much for you. Maybe she was blaming herself, thinking she would have failed if not for Iris' intervention, never even knowing what that old man was truly after. But I was still grateful for her. She looked relieved to see me. More stable, at least for now. So I seized the moment and activated the message. Ada, there's something you need to hear. As soon as I said that, my father's voice echoed throughout the room, his words manifesting once more like magic. Hello, Ada. It's been a long time. The instant she heard that voice, Ada trembled as she clung tightly to my sleeve. In a soft, stunned whisper, she said, Fry, that voice. I nodded to her, and my father continued speaking. I heard him apologizing to her, telling her he had always loved her as his daughter, and that he had never once hated her. To be honest, I didn't want to hear his voice again. Every time I did, I felt the void inside me deepen, and those suicidal thoughts return. But this was something Ada needed. My father spoke to her at length, though he never revealed any of our secrets. Just a few simple words, like how much he loved her, were enough to bring Ada Starlight to tears in my arms as I knelt beside her, holding her close. For someone like her, who had spent her entire life trying to earn her father's recognition, hearing those words after all this time was the culmination of everything she had endured. She had finally heard what she had longed to hear most. Ada wept in my arms, and I looked at her in silence for a while. She clung to me tightly, her warmth seeping into my skin. Ada Starlight, the girl who did everything she could to be acknowledged by her father, who honored her mother's memory, and who supported her brother with everything she had, even when that brother was nothing more than worthless trash. But more importantly, Ada was my father's daughter, my real father's daughter, which meant she wasn't just my sister by name. She was real, truly real. I returned her embrace, holding her tightly as I buried my face against her right shoulder. We sat there like that for some time. I'm not sure what exactly changed that day, but something did. Ada's place in my heart had shifted. She became the first real person I had in this world. Time passed quickly after that. I had to explain to Ada that I had somehow found that message from our father within me, stored in the form of a power he'd left behind. It might have been hard to believe, but she didn't doubt me, not after I revealed the Dark Sister. That sword had now fused with my right arm in the form of a large tattoo. An intricate flower, a flower on the right and a serpent on the left. My body was slowly being covered in tattoos, and I could feel it. My strength had grown more than ever before. I was now heading north, inside a carriage bound for the coldest region of the Empire, to serve my sentence in Alcatraz prison. And the one accompanying me on this journey was Phoenix Sunlight. He had been watching me for a while. Looks like you've finally come back to your senses. More or less. At the very least, I wasn't the suicidal wreck I'd been before. Do you hate me, Fry? For what I did back at the tribunal? I shook my head. Not at all. I understand it had to be done. After all, it was the only way to pull me out of the mess I'd dragged them into. Phoenix nodded, satisfied, as he turned his gaze to the snowy landscape outside. We were heading into one of the coldest regions in the Empire, the location of its worst prison. Alcatraz. To be honest with you, Fry, right now, the Empire views you much like they did the former temple director, Bloodmater. They're trying to use you. The previous director, Raphael Bloodmater, was also serving his time there, awaiting the next great war. They've already crafted a plan around you, Fry, because of your inexplicable talent. And me? I'm just the one assigned to keep watch over you, if I ever determine you're a threat. They want me to kill you immediately. Phoenix was honest with me, and I appreciated that. I understand. He nodded, then smiled faintly. If you want to escape the future others have written for you, Fry, then you need to become like him. Like your father. Like Abraham Starlight. Strong enough to shatter every obstacle. I let out a long sigh, thinking about everything happening around me. You don't know, Phoenix, there are greater things at work. Forces planning my future from above. I wonder, just how much power would I need to break those chains? To free myself from the fate that others had decided for me, I would need so much more. I continued speaking with Phoenix throughout our journey toward the prison. He never once felt like a warden assigned to monitor me. No, he was completely friendly. As we neared our destination, I received some information about my sentence. You'll be staying here for 3 months, but for you it'll feel like 3 years. Inside, powerful magic is applied to distort human perception, making time feel much slower. Aura suppressors would also be enforced, rendering me completely powerless to resist, especially during the torture. You'll suffer inside, Fry, but you'll have to endure it. This was the lightest punishment I could get away with for now. The duration was set to 3 months so I could return just in time for the start of the temple's 2nd year. I understood that clearly. Alcatraz was considered hell for many, but physical pain didn't mean much to me anymore. In fact, it might be just what I needed, because my mind was overwhelmed with too many things. 3 months that would feel like 3 years. It would be more than enough time to clear my head and reorganize every one of my plans for the future. After a long, silent ride, that massive fortress finally came into view. Its tall, black walls towering in the distance. It looked less like a prison and more like a dark military city. This was to be my new home. I closed my eyes as the guards began dragging me through its gates. Let's start over. It was time to write a new chapter in this wretched life. Chapter 236. To Wake a Nightmare. The falling leaves told a tale. A tale of a young man who struggled within a cruel world, unaware of the terrifying truth waiting ahead. The world was shifting. A war loomed on the horizon. A war crueler and darker than any that had come before. The Empire was preparing. And so were the Ultras. Those extreme factions, mysterious and unknown to the rest of humanity, inhabited an entire continent of enigma. No one knew how life there truly was, for that land obeyed laws far different from those of the civilized world. The continent of the Ultras was split into 2 parts. One made up 90% of the land. Barren and dead, a never-ending desert known as the Desolate Lands. The remaining 10% was called the Bloodlands. Scattered cities, ruled under the tyranny of higher blood. The contrast between the 2 regions was so stark, they might as well have belonged to different worlds. Amid the shifting sands of the Desolate Lands, a man and a young figure walked side by side, cloaked in a fierce sandstorm. The first wore a regal black suit beneath a long overcoat and covered his face with a scarf. He was none other than Lord Gavid Lindman of the Ultras, and beside him strode his Empyrean, his masked subordinate known only as V. Judging from their state, they had been traveling on foot for quite some time. Lord Gavid, do we really have to get involved in this nonsense? V's displeasure was obvious in his voice, but Gavid Lindman replied calmly. It's a direct order from High Demon Astaroth. We don't have a choice. He recalled the mission handed to them by Astaroth himself. We've been tasked with gathering all the hollows. They're essential for the war to come. The higher blood plan to end the conflict with the Empire once and for all. As he listened, V grumbled under his breath. The hollows, I've heard all the stories, but are they really as strong as they say? They are, Gavid affirmed. You saw firsthand what one of them did that day. Ludwig, the cursed one. V remembered that mad beast who dared to attack Astaroth. Ludwig is the weakest of the 5 hollows. The other 4, they're far worse. There were 5 in total, and all of them were monsters. As they pressed deeper into the storm, V voiced another question that had been on his mind. If a battle broke out between the Lords and the Hollows, who would win? Gavid didn't hesitate. Except for the old man Murgo, whom I know little about, they'd most likely wipe us out completely. Is it really that bad? Yes. Suddenly, the two stopped. Something ahead had made their blood run cold. Gavid frowned in disgust, and V swore aloud. What the hell is this? Before them stood dozens of wooden stakes, each impaled with human bodies, still alive. But it wasn't just that. It was what had been done to them. Their bodies had been twisted into grotesque forms. Some had extra arms sewn onto their backs or limbs attached in bizarre places. Their real limbs had been severed. Eyes and mouths were expertly stitched shut, making them unable to scream or beg. Some men had their bodies mutilated and strange shapes sewn into their faces. Others were mangled beyond recognition, then sewn back together like mockeries of life. And all of them were silent. Whoever tortured them had left them alive, but destroyed their souls. She's near. This is one of her signatures, Gavid muttered. With a swift movement, he raised his sword and sent a wave of power that ended all their suffering. Then they moved on. Who exactly is the hollow we're after? V asked again. Gavid's voice turned grim. There are 5 hollows, like I said. 2 of them are rumored to be mindless beasts. The first is Ludwig, the one you saw that day. And the second, he paused, gaze narrowing against the sandstorm, is the worst of them all. The one known as Pontiff Sullivan. For Pontiff, Lord Godfrey was dispatched. He volunteered to confront the strongest of the hollows. There are 2 other hollows, more rational than the rest, which makes them easier to recruit. The puppet master, Simon Manus, and Father Smog. That sly old bastard Murgo said he'd handle them himself, claiming they're the easiest targets. Gavid Linman grumbled bitterly, especially when it came to the last hollow. Which leaves us with the final one, a woman. As the two continued onward, they encountered more mutilated bodies, twisted and warped in grotesque ways. Some had been horrifically fused together. It got worse with every step. Disfigured, naked figures staggered through the sand, unable to scream, their mouths stitched shut. Don't be surprised by what you see, Gavid muttered. The one we're looking for is the most deranged of all the hollows, a woman described as being closer to demons than humans. The Blood Queen, Evelyn. It had taken them months of searching, wandering what felt like eternity. Eventually, Gavid Linman and the masked V reached one of the desolate cities. A battered sign marked its name, Black Flag. They walked through its streets, completely deserted. Most of its residents were holed up inside tents resembling a freak show circus. Occasionally, some desperate fool tried to approach, only to be cut down by Gavid's sword before they got within 5 meters. His eyes now glowed red. He could feel it. The presence was close. She's nearby. They pressed on, eventually stepping into one of the massive tents. The stench of blood and filth overwhelmed their senses. A filthy, middle-aged man with a blood-stained apron glared at them from within. What the hell do you want? Behind him were scattered corpses, one of them lying sprawled on a table. It was a large man, dead. The old butcher snapped. Here to rob me? These bodies are mine. The state of the place was abominable. Human flesh was treated as food, and body parts served all sorts of functions. V gripped his sword, bloodlust radiating from him. Should I kill him? But Gavid shook his head. Don't. He stared at the filthy man. We're not here to rob you, but take my advice. Get out while you still can. You'll die if you keep this up. Ha! You bastards gonna preach at me now? Get lost before I shove this blade up your ass. The old man raised his bloody knife threateningly. V moved again, but Gavid stopped him. I said don't. He pointed to the butcher. Why don't you keep working? We won't bother you. We're just watching. Keep my ass. I told you to leave. The old man was about to lash out, but he froze the moment he sensed Gavid Linman's patience wearing thin. It was late, but he finally realized these 2 men weren't ordinary. Reluctantly, he turned around, sweating. Damn it. Fine. You can watch this old man work. Grumbling, the butcher turned to the corpse on his table. With a steady hand honed by years of grim practice, he sliced open the man's stomach. The cut was precise and deep. Blood spilled across the table. Then, suddenly, he screamed and stumbled back, terrified. What the? V stepped forward, puzzled. What is it? The butcher shrieked from the floor. Inside his stomach, from within the dead man's abdomen, two blood-soaked, slender arms slowly emerged. Bit by bit, the woman curled up inside began to emerge, hugging her bare legs, her body completely drenched in blood as she slowly crawled out from within the corpse. The moment her face came into view, Evelyn opened her wide black eyes and cast a sleepy glance at those who had disturbed her rest. Oh, you found me. Slowly, she pulled herself out of the dead man's body. Always so annoying. To the very end. She muttered, then pointed at the old man who had dissected the corpse. D. With a flick of her finger, the blood soaking the terrified old man's clothes began to ripple, then suddenly exploded, reducing him to nothing but scattered flesh. V froze for a moment as the scent of blood tickled his senses, especially when his eyes met that strange woman's. She smiled at him, and a bizarre aura began to radiate throughout the tent, an aura that was instantly shattered by Gavid Linman's swift strike through the air. Don't look at her. Oh, what a killjoy. Evelyn laughed as she tossed aside the corpse she had emerged from and sat naked atop the bloodied table. Evelyn, the high demon summons you. HM, let me put something on first. Gosh, you're such a nuisance. Linman, didn't I tell you last time that if we ever met again, I'd kill you? Didn't I? She tapped her finger against her lips as she stared at Gavid. I wonder what kind of face one of the lords of the Ultras would make when being tortured. Despite the blatant provocation, Gavid didn't attack. He remained composed and patient. These are direct orders from a high demon blood queen, Evelyn. Refusing them now. Are you threatening me? Evelyn's expression darkened, but Gavid continued calmly. Interpret it however you wish. His hand moved to his blade, waiting for her reaction. But Evelyn simply waved him off. Leave already. You're such an eyesore right now. What? She stood and walked away without looking back. You want to win the upcoming war, don't you? To fulfill your pathetic ambitions. She picked up a short coat that barely covered her rear as she walked off, still soaked in blood. I'll come when the time is right, but if anyone bothers me now, I'll kill them. So leave. Gavid hesitated as he watched her turn her back on them completely. I want a new man to play with, but they all rust too quickly. They're all so hideous. Evelyn kept mumbling madly to herself. I need someone beautiful, dripping in blood, used to pain, someone whose body has endured every type of torment, someone I can truly create with. She hugged herself, shivering with twisted delight. With someone like that, I could live happily for years, for a very long time. Only now did V finally begin to grasp what Linman had meant earlier. About the Hollows. He finally understood how truly deranged and monstrous they were. Time was moving forward, and war was drawing near. Evelyn, the Blood Queen, Simon Manus, the Puppet Master, Father Smog, Ludwig the Cursed, and the strongest hollow of them all, Pontiff Suliivan. The Ultras were assembling at full power for the war to come. And elsewhere, deep inside Alcatraz prison, Fry Starlight was enduring his sentence, awaiting the next chapter of his suffering. Chapter 237. When the Chains Fell Quiet 1. Between Two Worlds. That was the title of a struggle that ended in tragedy within just one world. But the world itself was deeply divided, and everyone lived their own version of the tale. On the desolate side, steeped in the scent of death, beneath lifeless skies and over a barren land, the march of a great army thundered forward, its cavalry unleashing an aura of raw intimidation. The knights of this host wore black armor emblazoned with cryptic insignias. At their head rode a towering figure in golden armor, infamous across the continent, Godfrey, Lord of the Ultras. His army, one of the strongest known, now marched toward a new battlefield. But their opponent wasn't an army. It was just one man. As they advanced further, the Ultras finally reached a strikingly distinct zone, one marked by a towering barrier stretching into the sky. A cadre of mages rushed out to greet them. "We welcome the High Blood. Where is he?" Godfrey's voice bore no patience, only battle lust. The mages understood. They led without delay. Still within the barrier as always, wandering aimlessly, waiting for new prey, Godfrey snarled, signaling his forces to prepare. Their enemy was a monstrous entity hailed as the strongest among the Hollow, Pontiff Sulivan. Let there be no misunderstanding. This was no ordinary foe. He was something else entirely. Pontiff Sulivan possessed no awareness of his surroundings. He couldn't be spoken to, reasoned with, or communicated with in any form. He would simply attack anything in sight. He was once human. No one knows how that changed. Sulivan had slaughtered legions of men and beasts alike. He had turned entire provinces into wastelands, so much so that the greatest Ultras mages had constructed colossal barriers to trap him in a vast expanse. His prison was the size of a nation, its boundaries maintained by mages working round the clock. These barriers emitted a suppressive aura that usually repelled predatory beasts, but surprisingly, they proved effective against Pontiff Sulivan in the past. And so, for a very long time, Pontiff Sulivan wandered alone across that land, after slaughtering everything within it. A prison the size of a country built for one man. That's how great a calamity the Pontiff was. Now he was their target. Godfrey commanded his army to ready themselves. They passed through the barrier and entered the sealed zone. It was said that Sulivan could sense anyone stepping into his prison. But no one saw or felt anything at first. "Find him, now," Godfrey ordered. Mages quickly triangulated his location. He was far away, hundreds of kilometers out, dragging his enormous sword behind him. The Ultras began their assault. Their arsenal included arcane cannons and other weapons of unspeakable power. Every resource they had was aimed at a single target. Spells were cast, sonic waves charged, and the magical artillery roared to life. A rain of destruction blackened the sky. All of it fell upon the Hollow. An earth-shattering explosion followed, a shockwave cresting skyward. They had hit him. That much was certain. The cannons could damage even SS-class entities. Surely he had taken some harm. A flicker of hope stirred. "Did we get him?" someone asked. Then silence, followed by dread. A suffocating killing intent crept into their bones. The feeling of imminent death settled over the soldiers like a second skin. Godfrey stepped forward, twin greatswords gleaming. "He's coming." They couldn't see him yet, but the deathly aura closing in was all the proof they needed. In the end, they trembled where they stood, deep within the barren lands, as a horrifying roar tore through the air. Moments later, they saw him, charging from the distance like a feral beast. A single man, sprinting on 3 limbs, dragging a colossal greatsword behind him, its weight carving a trail through the earth. He wore a full suit of armor, rusted and eroded by some kind of dark energy, and atop his helmet sat a crimson plume. But none of that mattered. "Rayarag!" The monstrous scream intensified as he entered their range. They bombarded him instantly with countless magical attacks, tearing apart the ground around him, yet he never stopped. Rayaaga! The sheer weight of his killing intent was enough to make even the most battle-hardened warriors tremble. Among them, Godfrey charged forward, toward Pontiff Sulivan. Godfrey unleashed his full power, flooding the battlefield with gravitational and earthen aura to crush his enemy beneath the weight of his might. Ultra's Lord versus Hollow. Both of them thundered toward each other, their roars growing more savage with every step. In seconds, Godfrey found himself face to face with Pontiff Sulivan, only those terrifying eyes visible through the cracks in his helm. And then the world shook. Godfrey's twin swords clashed against Sullivan's massive greatsword. Godfrey, revered as the strongest tank alive, said to be able to withstand both Oliver Kahn and Ivar Valerian at once, was believed to be invincible in raw physical combat. But jaws dropped in horror when he was hurled into the sky with a single blow. That mountain of a man, weighing tons, flew through the air before crashing violently, tearing through the terrain and leaving a gaping dent in his armor. There was no time for shock, because the monster was already there. Pontiff Sullivan, having launched the strongest among them like a ragdoll, now stood before the rest of Godfrey's army. Thousands strong, they suddenly looked small, insignificant, when the pontiff's scream thundered once more. He leapt into the air, spiraling mid-flight, and brought his great sword down in a sweeping arc of devastation. Flesh and bone were torn apart in an instant. Within seconds, he had carved his way deep into their ranks, tearing everything in his path to pieces. From the beginning, recruiting him had been a fool's hope. The only plan was to eventually unleash him upon the Empire's forces at the right moment. But they had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated him. Godfrey rushed back into the fray, but Sullivan was still slaughtering his soldiers with primal savagery. He bit and devoured them through the mouth slit of his blood-stained helmet. It was a massacre. The Empire Alcatraz prison. Alcatraz was the Empire's largest prison, sealed with powerful enchantments that distorted the senses and stretched the perception of time. 3 months ago, it received one of its youngest inmates ever, a 17-year-old boy. Strangely, he showed no fear of the infamous prison that loomed before him. From the moment he parted ways with Phoenix Sunlight, Fry Starlight was dragged to his cell. A narrow, empty room with no bed, just a chair and a toilet in the corner. Fry spent most of his time there, seated with a vacant expression, often found staring into the void. He did nothing else. No torture was applied at first. That was Alcatraz's method. The first month, equivalent to an entire year for the senses, was pure isolation between 4 suffocating walls. This psychological tactic was highly effective, often breaking inmates before the real pain even began. Thus, the first month passed. Then came the second. And at that point, Fry felt as if a full year had gone by. The second phase began. Chapter 238. When the chains fell quiet, too, a guard stepped in, well over 2 meters tall, shirtless and iron-helmed, his massive muscles glistening. Fry was shackled with aura-suppressing cuffs. He wore only a tattered black pair of trousers, barefoot and disheveled, slouched silently on the cold floor. The guard stepped forward, flipping a dagger through his fingers with a fluidity that betrayed long years of experience. "So you're Fry Starlight, huh? You really are young. Probably the youngest I've had to deal with so far." He leaned down and gave Fry a light pat on the shoulder. "Anyway, nice to meet you. My name's Vlad, and starting today, I'll be your executioner." His tone was cold, laced with menace. The iron helmet on his head didn't help. But Fry simply smiled.
Plisures mine.
"I look forward to our time together." Vlad froze for a moment. Usually, inmates at this point were jittery, left too long in solitary, only to be greeted by a monster assigned to torture them. He was supposed to be afraid, but Fry Starlight wasn't. Vlad adjusted his posture and continued. Maybe the kid was just mentally unshakable, or maybe he was completely insane. "Very well then, Fry Starlight. I'll be asking you a few questions. I expect full cooperation and honest answers. That'll make things easier for both of us." "Understood." Fry nodded with the same casual smile. "Understood. Good." Vlad sat in front of him. "First question. You've killed many innocent people before, haven't you?" "Yes. My report says you regret it deeply and feel guilty. Is that correct?" "That's a lie." "What do you mean?" Fry shrugged, answering calmly. "It's true that I killed them, but I don't feel anything about it. Honestly, I couldn't even tell you what their faces looked like. So, You feel no guilt? None. Second question. Where did you get your sword and your fighting style? From an ancient sect located in the eastern part of the Nightmare Lands. How did you even know it was there? The reports say you already had knowledge of what was hidden in that region. I just got lucky. Lucky, huh? Yes. Third and final question. What were you trying to accomplish with that attack? The suicidal ignition that nearly destroyed the entire temple. Fry answered without even blinking. I wanted to destroy the world. Or at the very least, Belgrade, the capital. Vlad didn't know what to say. Was the boy insane? That would explain the eerie calm. And those insane answers. Destroy the world? Vlad twirled the dagger in his hand. This wasn't what he wanted to hear. He muttered under his breath, "That's wrong. Dead wrong. Guilty." He roared, plunging the dagger deep into Frey's left thigh. Blood splattered across the floor as the blade sank into flesh and bone. Vlad let out a breath of satisfaction as he twisted the dagger. But the scream he expected never came. Slowly, he looked up and met Frey's gaze. The boy was staring at him with the same expression. Those empty black eyes, silently asking, "What are you doing?" Vlad immediately checked the suppression cuffs. Still active, meaning Fry hadn't used aura reinforcement. He was just enduring the pain, naturally. Vlad yanked the dagger out and sat down again, facing Fry, who was now bleeding heavily. "I'm going to ask you again." "All right." Fry replied with the same indifference, which only fueled the executioner's frustration. He repeated the same questions. Fry gave the exact same answers. So Vlad began to torture him. He sliced flesh, burned skin, broke bones, and crushed fingers. But no matter what he did, no matter how far he pushed, Fry Starlight never flinched, never screamed, never begged. He just sat there, quietly staring at Vlad from that blood-soaked chair. Breathing heavily, trembling with fury, Vlad finally snapped and screamed in Frey's face. "What the hell are you? Are you some kind of masochist who enjoys torture?" How had he not gotten a single reaction? But Fry only shrugged. "You're the one who asked me to be honest." Damn it! The torture continued, fruitless as ever. And thus, the first day ended with Vlad storming out, leaving Fry behind. Bloodied, broken, and silent. But when Vlad returned the next day, his mind brimming with new methods of torment, he froze the moment he saw Fry. The boy sat there as if nothing had happened.
No bruises. No cuts.
Not a single scar. Vlad rushed toward him, wide-eyed, and checked the cuffs suppressing his aura. Still active, still functional. He snapped at Fry. "How the hell are you doing this?" Fry tilted his head with the same deadpan face. "Doing what?" "This. The healing." He pointed to Frey's perfectly intact body. Fry replied flatly, "I didn't do anything. My body just recovered. It's been a while since you left." Vlad clutched his face. It had only been a day, but to Fry, it had felt like a full week. His subconscious mind had concluded that a week had passed. And so, believing that was enough time to heal, his body simply did. Regenerated on its own, without him even realizing it. "You're messing with me." "I'm not. Damn it." And so, the cycle of torture continued. For 2 whole months, which to Fry Starlight felt like 2 years. By the end of it, Vlad was a wreck. He screamed, he shook, he wept. Why? Why didn't this boy break? He began to question his own skills, the years he'd spent perfecting the art of agony. Was he truly incapable of doing his job? But the problem wasn't him. The problem was the boy in front of him. On the final day, Vlad left the cell with slumped shoulders, utterly defeated. Fry waved him goodbye with a faint smile. "I'll miss you, Vlad." Vlad flinched at the words, trembling with barely contained rage. "I hope I never see you again. Go die somewhere far away from me." He slammed the door. Fry chuckled to himself. I really do pity him. 3 months in Alcatraz had changed Fry Starlight. The biggest change? The return of his pitch-black hair, now restored to its original state. The white hair had merely been a side effect of the Moonlight family's curse. And now, after enough time had passed, Frey's black hair had returned once more. His features remained the same, but he looked more like the Fry of old, his former self. He sat, gazing quietly at the window that appeared before him. Executioner, Vlad. Affection points, -50. Vlad despises you. He sincerely wishes for your death. Fry smiled, then sighed. He had one more thing to worry about now, alongside his achievement points. The system, the new second-level system, had brought him many perks, many new abilities. But it also seemed like it was going to toy with him more than the first one ever did. Fry remained seated, awaiting his release, analyzing the system that now governed him. And at the very bottom, one new section stood out. Quests. A new final quest had appeared. But its content, final quest? It was blank, just like Fry himself. Empty. Utterly empty. Chapter 239. Rebirth Through Silence 1. Fry Starlight's POV. This is your last day here, Fry Starlight. Hope you haven't grown too fond of the place. One of the guards smirked as he stood at the entrance of my cell. 3 months had passed in this cage. A cell that felt more like a tomb. Time inside Alcatraz was distorted. What should have been 90 days had dragged into 3 long, bitter years in my mind. This cell had become almost familiar to me, oddly reminiscent of the dorm rooms I once knew in my previous life. 3 years. They should have been enough to change something inside me. I truly believed that. I thought they'd be enough to fill the void, to give me a reason to keep moving forward in this cruel, unforgiving world. But they weren't, and they never will be. No matter how long I stay, this world has nothing that can fill the space they left behind. It's not fair, Father. A bitter smile curved my lips as I slowly rose to my feet, preparing to leave the only place I'd come to know again. Why did you leave me with those words? Why did you tell me to live? Because of you, I no longer have the right to die. Not even that belongs to me anymore. So what am I supposed to do now? 3 years have passed, and all they've done is confirm how hollow I really am. There's a war in my head, a chasm swallowing my heart whole, and so many questions tearing at what's left of me. What should I live for? For vengeance? Against Weskier, the monster whose fate I don't even know? Or the engineer who dragged my father and me into this hell and forced us to suffer? Or should I live quietly, as my father wished, to appreciate what I have, to protect it? All of those reasons could be fuel. I told myself that over and over, trying to believe it. But after 3 years locked in my own mind, I realized that fire is gone. It burned out, swallowed by the abyss inside me. I wanted to be like those epic heroes in stories, driven by vengeance, screaming to the sky, "I'll kill all the demons." But that dream was never real. Something inside me died a long time ago. Back then, the Victoriad gave me purpose, a goal I could chase with everything I had. But now there's nothing. Absolutely nothing. God, I'm so empty. Lost in thought, I barely noticed when the cell door opened. The guards pulled me out in silence. As we reached the prison gates and I stepped onto solid earth. Earth not poisoned by the chill of the prison. I was instantly hit by the bite of cold wind outside. I was barefoot, wearing only torn black pants, and my upper body was completely bare. The storm stung against my skin. My black hair had grown slightly, brushing the back of my neck. 3 months wouldn't have done much, but 3 years in my head? Maybe it left a trace. Waiting for me was the same carriage that had brought me here, and standing beside it, just as before, was Phoenix Sunlight. Phoenix. The young lord of the Sunlight family smiled gently, placing a hand on my shoulder. It's been a while, Fry. I imagine it felt like 3 years to you. It did, I replied. Come on, let's leave this place behind. I'm sure you've had enough of it. I didn't argue. I stepped into the carriage beside him. Once inside, I glanced at Phoenix, and immediately the system triggered a window. Phoenix Sunlight. Affection points, 20. Phoenix has some expectations for you, but doesn't fully trust you. He remains cautious. Available information. Name Phoenix Sunlight. Rank SS.
Combat style, éternelle flamme.
Current thought. Strange. He spent 3 years being tortured, and yet, he's still exactly the same. I stared at the system window hovering beside his name. This was one of the new abilities granted by the Level 2 system. The affection meter helped me read people more clearly now. And Phoenix, he was trying to figure out why I hadn't changed. Why, after 3 years of mental torment, I was still this hollow shell. Fry Starlight had barely lived 18 years in this world. 3 years in the context of that short life was already a long time, let alone when spent being tortured in the most notorious prison in the Empire. But what they didn't know was that my mental age was far older, and physical pain no longer had any real effect on me. Thanks to the affection system, I already knew the best way to deal with him. Throughout our trip back to the capital, Phoenix explained what would happen moving forward. Apparently, there were still plenty of people who wanted me dead, unconvinced by the final verdict of my trial. For now, though, I was safe, so long as I remained under the protection of Phoenix and my family. But my movements were being monitored. I was now completely beholden to the Empire's will, my blade expected to point wherever they ordered. They probably wanted me to take part in the coming war, to follow in my father's footsteps. In the previous war, they had always sent him to the front lines. He faced the enemy's strongest warriors time and time again, until they left him alone against Dragoth. Perhaps my father had grown into something they couldn't control, so they tried to dispose of him through war. In other words, they used him, drained everything they could from him, and then threw him away at the first opportunity. That thought made my blood boil. And yet, strangely, I didn't feel any particular hatred toward Mikar. The emptiness inside me consumed every other emotion like a black hole. After some time spent discussing formalities and what was expected of me going forward, I found myself listening as Phoenix began recounting some of the legends my father had left behind during his lifetime. To my surprise, I actually wanted to hear more. Phoenix noticed it too. The only real change that had happened to me, the light in my eyes, was the same one that had sparkled in his when he spoke of Abraham. I guess my father really was my hero. The journey didn't take long. With teleportation gates always on standby, we reached the capital territory quickly. As we neared our destination, I took a closer look at my new system and one particular skill that had quietly appeared in its depths. Third-person POV. When affection points reach 50 or more, you can now enter a third-person player perspective. This allows you to exist behind the target in an ethereal form, perceive their thoughts and emotions, and, if your affection level is high enough, even control them directly. A terrifying ability. As long as the affection level was high enough, I could spy, manipulate, basically do whatever I wanted. I wondered, was this some sort of exclusive ability granted to me as the author? The power to mess with my own characters? But in this world, this was no longer a novel. This was reality. There were so many mysteries still gnawing at me. How had I reincarnated into this body from the start, yet only gained access to it 2 years ago? The engineer, those statues, the nameless. Just thinking about all of it left my mind in shambles. So I decided to push it all aside, for now, and keep moving forward. Chapter 240. Rebirth Through Silence. 2. For someone who had spent most of his recent time locked in a cell, my first day outside passed in the blink of an eye. I saw Ada first. My sister was truly happy to see me again, and had developed that annoying personality trait where she acted like she was my mom. I was particularly shocked when I opened her status window. Name, Ada Starlight. Affection points, 99. The number was terrifyingly high. I thought 50 was the cap. Unlike Phoenix's window, Ada's status page was incredibly long, like it could drill into the ground if I let it keep going. With affection that high, I could see everything about her. Her thoughts, her abilities, what she liked, what she hated, every detail in overwhelming clarity. That's when I started wondering, What use did I even have for this ability? Oh, and I should mention, I tried using third-person POV on Ada. It worked terrifyingly well. I really did feel like a player watching her from behind. It was a relief, honestly, that Ada seemed to be the only person this ability worked on. If not, who knows what I might end up doing to them. Yes, Ada was the only one. Or so I thought. What's with that look on your face? If you keep zoning out like this, I'll beat it back into focus. A fist slammed against my sword, forcing me back a step. Sorry. Being locked up for so long dulled your combat instincts. Let's keep going until that body of yours remembers how to move again. Carmen cracked her knuckles, her eyes glowing as she locked onto me. In response, I took my stance, gripping Balerion, and muttered under my breath. What am I even fighting for anymore? What's the point of regaining these instincts? Ignoring my idle remarks, Carmen pressed forward, launching attack after attack in hopes of shaking the rust off me before I returned to the temple. I understood. She was doing this for me, even if she didn't say it. And I was grateful, especially for how she had always protected Ada. Not to mention, the moment I opened her status window, I felt completely at ease. Name Carmen Starlight. Current affection points, 50. Rank, as if. Combat style Stardust. This person trusts you and sees you as both an ally and someone important. Her affection score was high enough to reveal a lot. And apparently it wouldn't rise above 50 unless I did something about it. Something I'd done by accident with Ada. Even now, I still didn't fully understand how this new system feature worked. I spent a full week inside the Starlight Estate. The manor we stayed in was isolated from the rest of the capital, peaceful and quiet. Ada didn't leave my side for even a minute that whole week. She clung to me constantly, and strangely enough, I didn't mind it. Somehow I'd started seeing her as a real sister. I never would have guessed that something so simple could change our relationship so drastically. I still remembered the surprise and joy in her eyes when I started treating her like family, after all those old barriers between us had crumbled. Family, that was all I'd fought for up to this point. And now that family was right here, manifested in Ada Starlight. That warmth I felt. Maybe this was what my father meant when he told me to live. This kind of life. Maybe that's what he always wanted for me. Deep down, I hoped that was the answer. I wished for a future kind enough to allow such a life to bloom. Time really flies. Before I knew it, I was back at the temple again. The place hadn't changed at all. And strangely enough, I realized I'd made a lot of memories here over the past year, from my first days and bitter struggle to the final battle of the Victoriad. Now, I was no longer a first year. I had officially joined the elite class of the second year. I didn't realize it until I tried to enter my old room on the first floor and found a younger girl standing inside. Awkwardly, I had to carry myself upstairs, drawing unwanted attention and stirring up a commotion I could have done without. And in that moment, I realized how the others saw me now. I saw hatred in their eyes, disgust. To them, I was a criminal, and to be fair, I had just come out of prison. But among the disgust, I saw something else. Fear, dread. Without me even noticing, my name had started to carry weight. Much more than when I was just Fry, the guy who tried to assault a noble's daughter. Not that it mattered. I never cared what people thought of me anyway. I climbed the stairs, step by step, to the second floor, marking one more level of progression in my temple life. And then, I saw someone else heading to the same place I was. That broad back, platinum blonde hair, a towering, muscular frame that was hard to forget. We had once fought each other to the brink of death not so long ago. Now he glanced sideways at me, a golden eye gleaming with raw intensity. Well, Fry Starlight, decided to show your face at last. Demon turned fully toward me, his temper as explosive as ever. Demon, you being the first one I run into here, what's wrong? Did you get lost and accidentally wander into the elite class? I smirked, ready for our usual war of words. But Demon responded coolly. Humph, you'll be seeing me a lot from now on. He pulled out a black card engraved in gold, revealing his new designation. Elite class, rank AB 11. Now that I looked closely, his uniform wasn't one from the Abyss class. Up elf. I raised an eyebrow and Demon explained, "It means I belong to both elite classes now," which made sense. The only reason he'd been placed in the Abyss class to begin with was due to the political struggle between the prince and the princess. To maintain neutrality, he wasn't allowed in either of their classes. But now, with the looming threat of war, that neutrality was abandoned. Demon was officially added to the elite class, though in a rather strange way as a member of both Class A and B. However, being assigned rank 11 in both classes, that was a clear slight against him. He read my thoughts instantly, smirking as he pointed at my own card. "What's wrong? Is number 1 pitying me now?" Just as he said, my rank in Class B had changed since last time. Fry Starlight to Class B1. Apparently, ever since the Victoriad, I'd become number 1. I sighed, replying to Demon, "Numbers don't mean anything." "True," he agreed, and we continued up the stairs together. I was surprised by how civil he was being with me. I still remembered how hostile he used to be. "You seem like you've got a lot on your mind," he said. "I do, honestly. Since when can we exchange more than 3 words without fighting?" I asked, confused, and Demon raised an eyebrow. "What? You'd prefer if I started insulting you again?" Honestly, I kind of thought he would. "No. I just assumed you looked down on people like me." "I do," he answered quickly but didn't stop walking. "I look down on those who fight for meaningless things, people who act like they've achieved something when they haven't. That kind of shallow pride makes them shallow people." I nodded. That was Demon Valerian, his warrior's philosophy laid bare. He turned slightly to look at me. "But you're different, Fry Starlight." "Huh. I've never seen anyone fight with such desperation. The way you did. That raw hunger. The drive that said losing would be worse than dying. Like it was truly the end." Demon paused, recalling our semifinal match. "Someone who fights like that is a true warrior." His words left me with a strange feeling. Demon Valerian, the combat-obsessed lion of House Valerian, had just acknowledged me. I knew what he said shouldn't matter. It was meaningless, really. But for some reason, I couldn't think of anything to say back. My thoughts stalled. So the first words that came to mind left my lips instead. "A true warrior? I'm just a killer." I'd meant it more as an insult to myself than anything. But Demon just laughed as he walked ahead toward his room. "A killer? Open your eyes, Starlight. You're surrounded by people who've all killed at least once. Killing in this world, in this era, didn't carry the same weight it used to. The real reason everyone freaked out back then wasn't about who I killed. It was how I killed them. The danger I represented. The ones who judged me for my crimes were people who had slaughtered thousands themselves. It was never about morality. And Demon understood that, unlike the common students who despised me for it. "I'm looking forward to our next fight, Fry Starlight. Be ready." With that, he ended the conversation and disappeared into his room. I smiled too, then turned toward my own. "I'm looking forward to it," I muttered. I couldn't help but check Demon's status window out of pure curiosity, and what I saw caught me off guard. Name, Demon Valerian. Affection points, 30. Rank, B. Combat style, Dragon's Gate. This person respects you and considers you a rival. I needed to stop treating the elite class students like characters from some story. They were more real than I was in many ways. I still didn't know what I was supposed to do next, or how I was meant to live. Even the final mission from my system was still blank. But whatever the answer was, I was sure I'd find it here within the temple walls. And just like that, my second year at the temple began.